Like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down.
Alright, here we are, folks.
Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up. Tonight, we're gonna light it up. Just like the sunrise, we're gonna light it up.
Back once again, this is Chris Report, and he assured me that since I'm in town in Boulders, folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa. Plekken is on for jou and my. Jazelle, getting it started there with that beautiful song to start the broadcast today, Sunday, February 18th, 2024. Welcome back to the program, folks. Just a moment. Been sitting here for a couple hours and not a single cough, and then the moment I go live, I need to cough. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for those of you who joined the Telegram and WhatsApp groups to find out notifications about this broadcast. Can you imagine if YouTube actually shared my broadcast? How many thousands of people would actually tune in for this? Like we once upon a time had. It would be really exciting. But hey, it's an evil platform. You make the most of it. You do what you can. The problem in the world today is that people don't want to hear the truth from someone that's reasonable, balanced, cogent, lucid, and is willing to expose the fraud of the legacy media, the fraud of governments and politicians around the world, whether they are on the right or the left. And that's why I find myself in that. So Debbie has noticed I have an old khaki shirt on. That is correct. With a t-shirt underneath. That's correct. Well done. I wonder if anybody's going to notice old khaki, a South African brand. Yep, I'm not sure where it was made, probably in Bangladesh, but it is a South African brand. These used to be made exclusively in South Africa. Clothing, that is. Over 90% or 70% of South African clothing was made in South Africa 25 years ago. Today, it's a far cry from that. Most clothing is imported now because of the ANC's deals with commies and with third world nations that undermine the job security of Southern Africans in general. Let me say hello to everybody in the chat. We're going to have a little news update about Jazelle for those who are here, as well as the news. And for those of you who have the need to rush off and watch some other content creator at the top of the hour, I want to get as much in before you depart the scene so that you're up to date on events. Monray Sieberts is here. Welcome, Monray. And then we've got Teresa. Eric is here. Debaram, Vilma Erasmus, Val Cooper. Debbie says, thank goodness for the groups. Yes, it is. It probably gets me about 2/3 of my audience on a live stream. And Debbie's here. I already said Debbie. Wolf K is here. Welcome, Wolf. Ashley Engelbrecht, welcome to you. It is a hot Cape Town. Hot in the summertime. Adventures will well put together. Oh, thank you. Okay. When is the next? Well, Debbie, that depends on a number of factors. I will have some news to share probably later this week about events here in the United States, which may or may not affect my next trip to South Africa. So I'll let you know about that. I'm not there now because I have no money. I don't have the thousands of dollars extra cash sitting around to make a trip to South Africa. Otherwise, I'd be in South Africa at this very moment, doing my usual trip around the country. Frankly, between 26,000 Rand for one root canal, and I've been told I need to have another one. That's going to have to be delayed, but one root canal there. And then I've also been told I need another crown. That's costing 20,000 Rand. I just spent 20,000 on that one, so that's 46,000 Rand, plus the 38,000 Rand that I put into repairing my car a month and a half ago. And the list goes on. Now these are unexpected expenses. Now I can manage with cash flow, but that cash flow is money that usually is applied to trips. I don't deficit spend. Unlike governments and people who think credit cards mean they have money, I don't deficit spend. So if the cash isn't there, I don't make the trip. I can save it for a few months, but the money I would have set aside for these trips in particular has been burnt in keeping my mouth from rotting and my car on the road. So that's why I'm not there right now. But I should be past this and hopefully not have these problems occurring in the near future and be able to make a trip pending events here. Yeah, no, Roy, thank you for the super chat thing, but you can also PayPal if you want to PayPal. But thank you for that, guys. There's no need. I appreciate that if you're able to help. Just answering Debbie's question about when the next trip is. It all hinges on a number of things. Yeah. So, what else? Brian Lawrenson's here, and she likes the old khaki shirt. It is nice. I got this. Eric and I were in Asymptote at the mall, and that's where I bought this one at. I think I went there. I can't remember if I went there on my own, or if when Erica was around. I think it was when Erica was around, so I bought this old khaki shirt there. Very comfortable clothing, great brand. It is a great brand, agreed. George Steinberg is here, and Fleshin is in from the 15-minute city of Oxford. Veterans are not compensated enough. Well, Debbie, my retirement check is certainly reasonable. The problem is the health insurance. We have to pay for health insurance. When I entered the military, the promise and the standard was you got free health care the rest of your life if you're retired from the military. That's not the case. You have to pay for insurance, and then they push you into Medicaid when you turn 65, which is just atrocious. It's unacceptable. The upside for me is that I'm a physically disabled veteran and entitled to 100% health care. But that's health care. You don't get dental care from the Veterans Administration unless you were injured in combat or something like that. And if I take a bullet through my jaw and it affected my dental care, then I would get free dental care for that. But other than that, you don't get free dental care. It's an atrocious situation. People who are illegal immigrants are getting free health care, free dental care, and I served 36 and a half years, and I have to pay out of pocket for dental expenses. But that's life. That is life. I want to keep my teeth. They're not a bad set of teeth. And yeah, I still have them. Wash your car and it rained. Of course, that's why I never wash my car, because as soon as I do it, it rains. No, I actually washed my car about a week and a half ago because I wanted to put something on the door. So 22 degrees, says Roy. Okay. Well, dentists are cheaper. They're a little bit cheaper there, Erica, but some things are just expensive. Crowns aren't much cheaper because it's a professional skill. It's done with advanced equipment, and you can't just produce a crown. It's got to be made durable. It's got to be made that it fits precisely. Yeah, so I remember I had a temporary crown once from the Army, and it kept coming out. Every time I turned around, the damn thing came out. It was annoying. Yeah, they should cover 100%, Debbie. That's correct. I agree. The dental care is the biggest annoyance in retirement. The other is the system that the U.S. government set up in 1980 to defraud veterans. That's right. I said it, defraud veterans. What I mean by that is that until 1980, you got the percentage. So if you serve 20 years, you get 50% of your base pay. But remember, base pay is just a portion of your total compensation. You get free health care, you get free dental care, you get free housing. If you don't get free housing, you get a tax-free allowance to pay for housing. And many times people find places are cheaper and they can pocket the difference, or you pay very little out of your own pocket. And you get clothing allowance if you're enlisted. If you have specialties like a pilot, you get proficiency pay or professional pay. If you're a doctor, dentist, psychologist, some kind of profession like that, you get huge sum of money on top of your salary. Most soldiers don't get that. But when you retire, none of that follows you, only your base pay. So in my case, my base pay was roughly, I would say, about 60%, 65% of my total compensation. So I'm already starting out at 100, but it's 65. And from that 65, you get a percentage. So you get a percentage. At 20 years, you get 50%. So if I retired at 20 years, I would have gotten 32.5%. 32.5% of what I'd taken home the month previously is what I could take home. And virtually nobody can live off of that. When you're living on 100%, you drop down to 32%. And that's before taxes, folks. The taxes whittle that down by another 1/3. That makes it approximately 20-25% of what you're making the month before is what you make in retirement. So you can imagine that for a retiree 20 years, you really can't retire. You have to go work somewhere else. But it is a nice check to get, and it is helpful. But the thing is that when you have to pay for health insurance, you have to pay for your dental, that further whittles down your retirement, something you would have gotten on active duty as a soldier, sailor, marine, or airman. So that's kind of frustrating and annoying, but that's the reality. In my case, my retirement check is not horrible. It's not bad. It's pretty good, actually. I can't complain about it. I do better than most folks, but I did stay almost my entire adult life in uniform, which is incredibly rare. By the time that I retired after 36 and a half years in the Army, there were probably in the U.S. Army, out of 578,000 military personnel on active duty, probably, maybe, about 50 to 60 who had been in the military as long as me. And they'd be all 4-star generals. Maybe 100 out of 578,000 from the date that I entered. That's how few people entered the Army before I did when I retired, which means I stayed for a very long time. Yeah. Anyway, two fillings, 1,800. Yeah, well, Filling is one thing, Erica. That can be done rather quickly. The amalgam that's necessary for filling is relatively cheap. You're just basically paying for the labor and the cost of the dentist. But a crown is a different thing. A root canal is a different thing. You have to go to a specialist dentist who does the root canal, particularly when you have a situation where mine where the roots aren't straight. My roots go down and then curve into my jaw. And let me see, so I can do it like this, curve into my jaw. So the tooth goes down and the roots curve in like that. In order to get all of the pulp out, the dentine out of there that was infected because of the leaky filling, you have to be very careful. Otherwise, you break the tooth and then I have a gap in my mouth. And I didn't want that. So, yep. I was just told to carry on regardless, says Paul. Okay. Well, I am carrying on regardless. I'm not complaining. I'm answering your questions. So let's get that. Let's get that straight right now. I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you the reasons why and answering your questions. But let's just go ahead and talk about Jazelle very quickly here. So I had written to Jazelle and asked how she was doing. I wrote directly to Jazelle, not to her husband. Asked how she was doing a couple of days ago. And she responded with a voice note, a very kind voice note, which I hadn't shared because we had rugby coming this weekend. But I do see that she did a Facebook post. I only had a few moments to watch some of it, so I'm not sure what all Jazelle shared with you. However, what I can tell you is that Giselle's prognosis is looking good. She's not out of the woods based on the conversation we had. It looks like Giselle's cancer may very well be in remission, but she has to go through a series of tests to ensure that's the case. This is very good news. Let's knock on wood, and thoughts and prayers for Jazelle and for her family. So that's some very good news to hear. Let's hope that it's actually genuine and not just misleading from the symptoms. But apparently she may be in remission, and hopefully she can be cured of cancer. That would be very good there. Being retired is okay. I'm enjoying it so far, says Fleshin. Well, I'm not really retired. I'm not really retired. Yeah. So, breaking news, the media and Hillary Clinton and a bunch of lunatics on the left want to tell us breathlessly that Donald Trump will remove the United States from NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Now, the problem with that, of course, is it's pure fiction. Just like Barack Hussein Obama cannot commit America to the Paris Climate Accord, the Green Deal, because it's illegal. He can sign the treaty. That's perfectly legal. But it has no weight of law in the United States under our system of checks and balances. The Constitution means that treaty must be approved by the Senate, a Democratic-controlled Senate, a Republican-controlled Senate. No Senate has ever signed off and approved and ratified the Paris climate scam. So we are not a party to it. When Trump became president, the leftist media, with breathless attention, rushed out to tell everyone that Trump has withdrawn America. Trump has withdrawn America. Simply not true. Trump abrogated the incomplete actions of Barack Hussein Obama by removing that commitment. But we were not part of the Paris Climate Accord, and we were never going to be part of the Paris Climate Accord because it's a scam. It's a total scam. It gives Brazil, Russia, India, China a free pass while we pay the cost of their industrialization. Hardly a fair situation. And we already see it here with electricity prices doubling in the eastern mid-Atlantic states as a consequence of foolish energy policies by a corrupt regime in Washington and a corrupt regime in Harrisburg, who are driving us to bankruptcy here and impinging on the quality of life of Americans, driving down our standards of living, and making very difficult choices for Americans suffering from Biden inflation and the corruption in the State House, in Harrisburg, and in Washington, D.C. It's unbelievable. Thanks for the updates on Jazelle. Yeah, Dennis even used the newest stuff. No amalgam. Okay, I don't know what the newest stuff is. Okay. Anyway, so it is not Donald Trump that is undermining NATO's collective security. No. Trump has simply told NATO partners to pay up what they promised to pay in 2014, which they failed to do, including Germany, which now the press breathlessly tells the public that Germany has met its 2% GDP obligation. That is a lie. That is a lie. They have done so, but not for Germany's defense, for Ukraine defense. They have poured their ammunition, they have poured their armor, they have sent their resources to Ukraine, and they are spending 2% of defense to backfill equipment and to arm the Ukrainians. That is not spending 2% on your GDP, of your GDP on your defense. Boy, I cannot talk today. My apologies, folks. So that is just smoke and mirrors. Just like the United Kingdom, which claims to spend 2% of its military budget on national defense, but that's also fiction because about a quarter of what they spend is actually spent for retirement salaries and checks for retired military. That is not national defense. That is not national defense. Now, we do the same. Our military retirees get their money out of the operational budget. But when you're spending 3.5%, 3.6% of your GDP, that's a small fraction of that. And we're still well over 2%. So the UK is fraudulent. Germany is fraudulent. And neither one is living up to their obligations to NATO for self-defense as part of collective security. And they have been getting away with it for years, suckling off the teat of the American taxpayer, who is spending nearly 4 times on defense what Germany was spending when Trump was president. Nearly 4 times our GDP as what the Germans are spending. Free riding, scumbag, useless leeches. That's what the German government is. All the goddess, what's that goddess? Don't want Trump. They're determined to destroy the way we're living now. Well, they've already destroyed the way we're living with indoctrination of children, polluting their minds. When 20% or 30% of children say that they're not heterosexual, that they're non-binary, and they use fictitious pronouns, making things up, destroying the English language, we've already lost things. It's already gone, and the world is coming to an end. Yeah, the apocalypse is upon us, you could say. Nice. Yep. Yeah, that's right. Russia's destroyed all the stuff that Germany, Denmark, Estonia, the United States, UK, France have given to Ukraine. There's very little bit left. So it is Denmark, which today announced, according to Newsweek, the only source I could find, Newsweek magazine about 3 hours ago released a story claiming that the Danish Prime Minister has promised all of Denmark's artillery. They will ship all of their artillery to Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Of course, the battle there is primarily an artillery conflict. All of their artillery. Denmark will strip its national defense and weaken the collective security. Of course, Denmark is a critical component of NATO security, with a peninsula that juts into the North Sea, separating the North Sea and the Baltic Sea and keeping the Russians contained in Eastern Europe. And Denmark is now removing all of its artillery, according to Newsweek, and giving it to Ukraine. That is the country that is undermining NATO's collective security. Germany, the United Kingdom, Denmark, they are undermining NATO's collective security, not Donald Trump, a private citizen. If anyone else doesn't know all the continents. Really? I didn't catch that. I missed that part. Let's get to the news now. Let's get into it because some people I know are going to want to leave for other shores at the top of the hour. 11:22 on the East Coast here right now, folks. It is 19 degrees Celsius here in my abode on the 18th of February, 2022. Let's get right into it here. State companies racking up losses as taxpayers sink 325 billion rand into bailouts. The National Treasury has given a new report to Parliament on the financial situation of the state-owned enterprises, or parastatals, in South Africa. It shows how much the government has been spent on bailing out these corrupt organizations over the past several years. Wow. Eskom, Transnet, South African Airways, South African Post Office, and Land Bank and Janelle were presented their reports to the Standing Committee on February 14th. Calculations from that presentation show that since 2020, 325.3 billion has been allocated by the government for bailouts to the above-mentioned state-owned enterprises. Eskom, wow. Total gross debt, securities, and borrowings increased to 439 billion. Now, bear in mind that Andre de Ruyter, the windmill-tilting green radical who ran Eskom briefly, and his life was, they attempted to murder him a couple of times. He actually lowered Eskom's debt from over R500 billion down to under 400 billion rand. Now they've run the total back up to 439 billion, another 40 billion on top of the bailouts that they're getting. Wow. Transnet, debt levels at 130 billion. South African Airways, net loss of 761 million rand in 2022. They had planned a profit of 92 billion. That would be a swing. That would be a swing of almost a billion rand. South African Post Office, a billion rand loss, 976 million in the third quarter against a profit target of 1.5 billion. These are just fantasy numbers, 1.5 billion profit. The Land Bank lost 97 million. Denel, how much did Denel lose? Operating cost, okay, it doesn't give the loss there. Yeah, the loss is down to 463 million. These state-owned organizations are not cutting it. Ladies and gentlemen, the South African legacy media did a very fine job, and I'm not defending the Democratic Alliance. I'm making a point here about how unfair the playing field is, how it's not a level playing field when it comes to the media and news reporting in South Africa and around the world. The Democratic Alliance, the official main opposition in South Africa, a party that should warrant the same attention as the ruling party when it comes to news reporting, launched its manifesto. yesterday, apparently. When it launched its manifesto, virtually no news coverage. Yes, News 24 has a story on it. Yes, the Independent Line has a news story on it. But the stories are buried. While on those same pages, the top story is Rise of Zansi and the money that's received. A minor, proclaimed not political party, but now is a political party, is the one that gets all the attention on the front splash page of these corrupt news sites. In order to find stories about the Democratic Alliance's manifesto launch, I had to go to international news sources, including Barron's, a financial report, for an actual story about this in a mainstream media cover-up of what the Democratic Alliance is doing. If they had hoped to have a major splash in the media, they didn't get it because of the corrupt media have covered up. And they've spent more ink telling us about Jacob Zuma's new non-party, Umkhonto we Sizwe, which has no constitution, which has no headquarters, which has no budget, which has filed no papers of incorporation. We are told that that party, which runs in elections, even though it doesn't exist, front page story every time there's something about it. But the Democratic Alliance, the main opposition, the lead actor in the multi-party charter coalition agreement, is yesterday's news, according to the corrupt media in South Africa. So here we had to go to the Associated Press in the United States. South Africa's main opposition party lays out plans to unseat the African National Congress. Thousands of South Africans gathered in the capital Saturday to show support for the country's biggest opposition party as it prepares a much-anticipated national election in which it hopes to wrest control from the ANC. Many of the DA supporters assembled in union buildings expressed faith the party would deliver better services and address some of the country's daunting challenges. The date for the national and provincial the national and assembly elections has yet to be set by Cyril Ramaphosa. Democratic Alliance supporters marched to the streets of the capital before listening to a spirited speech by party leader John Steenhuisen, vowing to unseat the ANC. In the 2019 elections, they received just over 20% of the national vote, closer to 22 actually. Yep. Under South Africa's inept system of government, lawmakers elect the president. So party or coalition majority will get the president, not the voters. So that's the story in the Associated Press. Here it is in Barron's. South African opposition launching election campaign. The Liberal Democratic Alliance, fighting to keep its place as South Africa's official party, opposition party, was to launch its electoral campaign on Saturday ahead of a hotly contested vote. I'm here today to see some change, and we want to give this political party a chance because you never know how it could work, says Ponso Mona, 24, because truly speaking, the ANC has failed. Indeed, it has. But this article gets the story wrong. The image of 110-year-old ANC, which is actually 112 years old, but they do get this part correct, the Liberal Democratic Alliance, because the Democratic Alliance is not a conservative party. But that's Barron's, a financial outlet. Now, this is what you get on News 24. This is the story if you look at it for News 24. This is pathetic and buried in the headline. DA promises social grants increase and end Decatur deployment in a rescue plan for South Africa. No photos. No photos here. All right, now there you go, down there. All the way down here we find a photo. And this was not the main page. They say the priorities are creating 2 million jobs. Newsflash, DA, you don't create jobs. Ending load shedding and water shedding. Newsflash, DA, you have corrupt parastatals. You're not going to be able to do that. Having the rate of violent crime. How are you going to do that unless you fix the justice system and fix the police? Abolishing cater deployment. That can be done. Lifting 6 million people out of poverty. How? With grants? With welfare? Tripling the number of grade 4 learners who can read for meaning. Well, that's a good idea. And ensuring quality health care for all, irrespective of economic status. Well, that sounds like a socialist communist agenda to me, ensuring health care for everyone. For the first time in our democratic history, the support for the ANC is set to crash well below 50%. It's a party in terminal decline, being ripped to shreds from all sides. John Steenhuisen said that the ANC was on its knees long before the Umkhonto we Sizwe party entered the political arena. As we speak, MK is devouring millions of ANC votes. The demise of the ANC has opened the door for the DA to achieve what was once considered unthinkable, to enter national government. Newsflash for John Steenhuisen and the Democratic Alliance. Those millions of votes for MK will simply form a coalition with the ANC. So you better hope there aren't millions of votes for them, MK, because that is just votes for the ANC when it comes time to form a coalition. They will join them full force. Here's another story. This was buried on the right column, not on the lead page for IOL, although it's the biggest news story in South Africa today. The DA manifesto, how the DA plans to end load shedding and water shedding. This one actually shows a photograph of the union buildings and the podium, as well as thousands of supporters in the blazing sun with their DA blue umbrellas. Under the shadow of the union buildings, DA leader John Steenhuisen unveiled the party's manifesto for the elections, presenting a comprehensive plan aimed at tackling pressing issues of load shedding. Well, that's not a plan. That's not a plan. That is not a plan. Those things that the News 24 reported are objectives. That's not a plan. A plan is how you will implement things. Meanwhile, front page news on News 24 is not the Democratic Alliance, the official opposition's manifesto launch, but rather Rise Mzansi. That's right, Rise Mzansi secures $17 million in donations less than a year after establishment. Political newcomers Rise Mzansi secured close to $17 million in funding less than 12 months after it was established. But even so, the party believes more resources are needed if they're to make any significant impact in the upcoming general election. Most notably, one of its main funders is Rebecca Oppenheimer, who donated $15 million to the party. Okay, see how dishonest this story is? Number one, the fact that this party, which claimed it wasn't a party, just a movement, now is a party because it lied to South Africans. Rise Mzansi gets $17 million. But they got $15 million from one person, Oppenheimer. So it didn't raise money. It was handed a wad of cash by a wealthy South African, and this story is the front page story in News 24. Do you see how dishonest the media is? This should not have been a front page story. The DA's launch. They gave the EFF front page, IOL, Daily Maverick, and the News 24 made the EFF's launch at Moses Madiba Stadium in eThekwini the lead story after their launch, splashing their red photos all over the place, despite the fact that it was a terminally small crowd that showed up for this event in eThekwini. Yet they made it the top news story. Here, no news outlet will even tell us how many people were actually there. The DA said that they hoped for 15,000 people to be there, but nobody has come forward and say how many people were there. Now, is that because it was embarrassingly small, or it was because it hit the number correctly, or because it was larger? We don't know. Unless you attended the event, you have no idea, because the media is dishonest. Dishonest. They are frauds, and they've always been frauds. So, 17 million. I'm not impressed. One person gave 15 million. 17 million rand is not even $1 million US. And here, IOL also ran a front page splash story, not on the DA's launch, but on Rise Mzansi. At least they're honest here with Oppenheimer pumping in most of the money. That's their title, so you got to give them credit there. Siyabonga Mkwanzazi actually tells the truth here. He says they've received more than 16.7 million in funding since it was formed. So it's even worse than the News 24 story. It isn't 17 million, but it's 16.7. That means that in one year, this party, this political party that's running for office to join the parliament in South Africa has raised a whopping total of $800,000 US. A national party, $800,000. Take out the Rebecca Oppenheim donation, and that's all it is. Dishonest media. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we saw the crime stats once again. I have told people the number is 82, but apparently the actual number based on current statistics is 84 South Africans will be murdered today. Think about that. Think about that. 84 South Africans will be murdered today that we know about. Others will disappear and never be known and buried or disposed of somewhere. 84 South Africans. Most of the deaths occurring in three major metros, Cape Town, Johannesburg, and eThekwini. South Africa's recorded increase in violent crime at the end of 2023. Police Minister Beckett Cilley said the murders in the third quarter increased by 2.1%. 431 murders linked to vigilantism and mob justice. SAPS recorded a total of 7,710 murders over the period, meaning an average of 84 people were murdered every day in the third quarter in South Africa. You're right, Debbie. Every single person here could be one of them. Stand together. But isn't it Stan Sam, not Sam Stan? Isn't that backwards? Jacob Zuma has been expelled from a post he was just appointed to, ludicrously. The convicted criminal, Jacob Zuma, was expelled as the KwaZulu-Natal Sanko chair over repeated absenteeism. The umbrella organization Sanko has moved to expel its chairperson, Jacob Zuma. That's chairman, Daily Maverick, chairman. Its chairman, Jacob Zuma, following his failure to attend meetings in KwaZulu-Natal since his election in office. The South African National Civic Organization, or SANCO, in KZN, has expelled its chairperson and former president, Jacob Zuma. The provincial conference of Sanko KZN, which took place on November 19th of last year, elected Zuma in absentia to the provincial chairman of Sanko KZN. But he is yet to attend a single meeting. Therefore, he's been removed because he had no interest in it. Well, there's a news story in business tech from sociologists or economists who are making a ludicrous argument that welfare is good for South Africa, making the case that people who receive welfare live longer. Really? Nearly half of South Africa's 60 million people receive social grants ranging from child support to pensions. Pensions are not social grants if you've paid into them. If you've worked and paid into a pension, that's not a grant. Let's get that straight right now. People who have pensions who earn them are not getting grants. They're getting a return on their labor. They're getting a return on their sacrifice, their blood, sweat, and toil. This is what leftists do. They distort the use of the language, misleading suckers. Grants are designed to provide financial assistance to people living in poverty. Largest components of South African social grant system were introduced, expanded to include the full population in the 1990s. Yeah. So they come down here and they make the claim at the end that our results so far clearly point to the benefits of South Africa's social grant programs for older adults as they're currently structured. They suggest that as South Africa ages in the coming decades, sustained investments in these programs will pay off in better health and well-being for the country's most vulnerable adults. Well, I suggest that welfare is not an investment. Welfare is a drain. It is a vampire. It is a leech on society. No one should be on welfare except for those who fall into the most unfortunate circumstances, and then only on a limited short-term basis. Perpetual welfare and grants to people who have to do nothing to earn it is not how you build a healthy, wealthy, and wise society. It is how you keep a society divided along class lines by making the people receiving grants lazy, useless leeches on society, and making them envious at those who actually earn their way and pay for the very money that's handed to them through no effort of their own. If you want better health for South Africans, stop murdering South Africans. If you want better health and life expectancy for South Africans, stop spreading HIV. If you want better health and life expectancy for South Africans, curb your obesity. Stop hypertension, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, lifestyle diseases, which are pervasive in South Africa, in particularly one ethnic group of people based on skin color where it is out of control. That's how you improve the quality of life for older South Africans who, when they reach their 50s and 60s, aren't suffering from debilitating chronic diseases as a consequence of their poor life choices. You'll go much further down the road than handing money out to lazy people. Here's a horrible story, folks. Sorry to share this one, but it's a very scary one. This is an independent online as well. A 3-year-old girl was found alive in the home after neighbors complained of an odd smell coming from the house. The police responded, broke into the residence, found a man hanging from the roof, and then later found his wife buried in a shallow grave out back in what appears to be a murder-suicide, leaving a 3-year-old child to die. Fortunately, the child has been taken into custody and was rushed to the hospital and has survived. What an absolutely horrific situation. 3-year-old girl rescued by police after spending days with her decomposing dad hanging from the roof. Police at Nebo in Limpopo's Sekhukhune district are investigating the case of murder and an inquest after a 38-year-old man and a 34-year-old woman were found dead at a home in the Ga Marshana Ditlalanging. The bodies of her husband and wife were found on Wednesday and Thursday, respectively, according to Limpopo Police spokesman Colonel Masasela Ledwaba. Police received information from neighbors about a house with an unpleasant smell. Upon arriving at said house, the doors were locked and they knocked with no answer. They forced entry and found a man hanging on the roof with a rope in an advanced state of decomposition. Inside the house, there was a 3-year-old girl, the daughter of the deceased man. She was immediately rushed to the police after the door was opened, and she was taken to the nearest hospital for medical attention. They also alleged there was a suicide note found in the home. Who does that? Who does that? You leave a 3-year-old child to die of dehydration, starvation, in soiled nappies? Good Lord. Please, somebody, adopt this child and raise it. Please. How can these things happen? I watched a video of a horrific situation that occurred over 20 years ago with a young girl who was 4 years old or 5 years. I think it was just 4 years, 3 or 4 years old. Yeah, 4 years old, I think. She called 911 after her parents were murdered by a guy who thought that they narked on him because he got in trouble for drugs. They had nothing to do with it. He went and murdered them for no reason, her mother and father. And the little girl called and talked 911 to tell the police. And she said, I think they're dead. and talked her through it. It's unbelievable. The horrific things people do in the presence of children, never mind the abuse, the sexual assaults, the incest that happens to children. This is unbelievable. These are people who do not deserve to reproduce, quite frankly. Those who do such things. And by the way, for the hate-wanking racists, the story I'm talking about the little girl, they were all white. This story, they're all black. So there's no race involved here. That's in your mind. It's a fiction in your mind. I'm reporting the news that everyone is affected by. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, 2 South African derbies yesterday in the United Rugby Championship. The Bulls went to Ellis Park to face the Lions and won in a rather unconvincing game, a boring, sleep-inducing fest in the first half. The Bulls performed better in the second half and managed to win the game, 25-10. Meanwhile, at Kings Park in Durban, one of the murder capitals of South Africa, Durban, eThekwini, down there, the Stormers made the coast-to-coast journey and won in a rather unconvincing fashion, 25-21, holding on in what was a game that wasn't anywhere near as close as the scoreboard would indicate, but it did help me in my Super Brew with 2 points. So that's the story. So the Bulls, uninspiring in their victory, they recover from an appalling first half to secure a critical bonus point win and move up to 3rd place in the URC with a 7-3 record. Pretty good. And there is a super chat from Usina, £10. Usina, I didn't even know you were here, and you sent £10. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. And then the Stormers, in rather unconvincing fashion, John Dobson saying that he's a little bit concerned. They see off Brave Sharks to keep unbeaten URC run against South African teams. So the Stormers, who started the season in convincing fashion, running up and down the pitch, scoring try after try, winning their first 2 games of the season, then went on a road trip to Europe and lost 4 consecutive games, and their season was in jeopardy. Have now won 4 consecutive games, taking the record to 6-4 and moving up to 6th place. The top 8 teams, of course, finish in the running for the playoffs. But the top 4 host the first game, so they still have some ground to make up. They failed to get a bonus point with only 3 tries here, and that hurt them. Otherwise, they'd be further up. In neighboring Namibia, coastal towns will be putting up billboards in honor of deceased President Hage Geingob. Orongo Governor Neville Andre says 4 billboards will be erected to honor the late President Hage Geingob. Sponsored by the private sector, will be placed along the B2 highway at road sections between Karabib and Usakos and Arandas and Swakopmund in Walfish Bay. These locations are chosen for the visibility and the potential to reach a wide audience, ensuring that the message of remembrance for the late president is seen by many. Hero worship. A McKinsey consulting firm makes a ludicrous claim, according to a media site whose web URL doesn't work from this story. It would not open up. But this is from the Namibia newspaper. Namibia could make $14 billion Namibian dollars, so about $700 million US dollars from wind turbine blades, saying it has the potential to generate close to $14 billion in revenue for the production of wind turbine towers if investment is channeled into the manufacturing sector. I'm sorry. Has McKinsey ever been to Namibia? Have you noticed there is no manufacturing sector there? Virtually no manufacturing whatsoever takes place in Namibia. And you're talking about $14 billion from wind turbines and advanced technology? Seems highly implausible and unlikely. Why are these super chats not showing up on the screen? Did Ashina show? I think Ashina showed up. Yeah. The Independent Electoral Commission in Botswana announces it's justifying its trip to Zimbabwe, where it set a benchmark on how Botswana's election in 2024 should run. They went to Zimbabwe, and that's how they set their benchmark. For some reason, the photo is all pixelated now. I'm not sure why. There you go. The IEC justifies their trip to Zimbabwe. Following backlash from stakeholders, the body responsible for conduct and supervision of elections in Botswana, the Independent Electoral Commission benchmarking exercise in Zimbabwe, was to focus on closely examining Zimbabwe's Electoral Commission accreditation machine. Oh, my goodness. So they go to Zimbabwe to learn how to run elections. Well, that doesn't bode well for voters in Botswana. Zimbabwe's Vice President Constantine Chiwenga, the man who led a military coup that overthrew. There's Deborah Olivier. 350 Rand. Deborah says, hello from the garden route. Thank you for speaking the truth when so many others ignore it. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. It's not an easy task. It's not an easy task, and it would be much more rewarding if thousands were watching this program. I see so many content creators on YouTube who have no idea what they're talking about, just talking out their backside. And because they have the right gender, the right pigmentation, they've dyed their hair the right way, they use the right pronouns, and they get promoted by YouTube, and they have millions of views. So am I sad about that? No. No, because most people watching their programs are also uninformed twits who don't know anything about the world. It's great to have people actually understand the content that's presented here. Thank you for 350 Rand super chat for that. Zimbabwe's corrupt vice president, Constantine Chiwengo, former head of the military, who overthrew Robert Gabriel Mugabe in 2017, issues a threat towards an LGBTQ group after it offers scholarships. Zimbabwean Vice President Constantine Chiwenga threatened a gay and lesbian group for offering university scholarships to underprivileged students. Chiwenga is serving as acting president while the crocodile is out of the country, said in a statement that the LGBTQ community is alien, anti-life, un-African, and un-Christian. He condemned an advocacy group, the Gays and Lesbians of Zimbabwe, for offering scholarships and urged young Zimbabweans to snub the offers. He accused the group of making an insidious attempt to advance foreign interests by enticing Zimbabwe's less privileged youth into the LGBTQ community's activities. The government sees such scholarship offers as a direct challenge on its authority and thus will not hesitate to take appropriate measures to enforce national laws and to protect national values. So Constantine Chiwenga is telling us that it is the government's place to invade your bedroom. However you feel about homosexuality is not germane to this issue. Whether you support or you have an issue with it from a moral perspective as a Christian or a Muslim, whatever the case may be. But the government has no right to see, say, or control what happens between consenting adults behind closed doors in their bedroom. This is a government out of control. This is what communists do. They interject themselves into your bedroom. Well, speaking of interjecting, they've imprisoned a main opposition leader over a bogus case and an unconstitutional law. He's sentenced to 9 months in prison. Prominent Zimbabwe opposition politician Jacob Sikala has been fined and given a 9-month suspended prison sentence after being found guilty of publishing falsehoods on social media, which means he won't go to jail unless he does something. Harare magistrate Farisi Chakuyunga handed sentence to the former Zengeza West legislator on condition that he does not commit a similar offense. Sikalala, who was last week convicted of communicating falsehoods, was fined $500 to be paid by 4 March, failing which he shall spend 2 months in prison. In response, Sikalala's lawyer, Harrison Nkomo, said his client should never have been charged in the first place under a law which the top court long ago ruled to be unconstitutional. The 52-year-old was upset about the murder of opposition members of parliament. He's an outspoken official with the main opposition Citizens Coalition for Change and a former member of parliament. He is seen by many as the face of resistance to Zimbabwe's ruling ZANU-PF and Mnangagwa, and was arrested in June 22 following the killing and dismembering of an activist from his political party. And the government doesn't want people to know that the ZANU-PF was responsible for that death, and so they sanction him and convict him of crimes that he did not commit that are unconstitutional in the law. Iswatini wants my head, says a German journalist living in South Africa. Kingdom Swati's regime wants me dead, exiled Iswatini editor Zweli Dlamini tells Mpumalanga court case is a ruse. Veteran Iswatini investigative journalist Zweli Martin Dlamini insists the Iswatini government's court application extraditing him to face a myriad of charges is a ruse to kidnap and send him back to Mbambane. The Iswatini regime is fighting me merely for being the voice of the voiceless and demanding transparency and accountability in the public administration. They launched a high court bid in Mpumalanga to have him extradited back to Swaziland. Well, more press abuse, real journalists being oppressed by government. China plans to spend $1 billion to revamp a Tanzanian railroad. The Tanzania-Zambia Railway embraced to control critical mineral trade routes. The Tazara rail line, first built in the 1970s with Chinese money, will be updated through a public-private partnership. It will connect the Zambian copper belt with Dar es Salaam, compete with the U.S. and EU-backed link between resource-rich areas and Angola's port. There you go. As global powers vie for control over critical mineral trade routes, China plans to spend $1 billion to refurbish a key railway line connecting Zambia's copper belt with the Tanzanian port of Dar es Salaam under its Belt and Road Initiative. Of course, the problem with that is it's not standard gauge rail, so they're either going to have to rebuild it entirely, or they're going to be on a rail line that no one else is using. It's narrow gauge rail, not standard gauge rail. Here's the other problem. While Fikile Mabalula and the ANC jet off to Russia to attend a conference bemoaning new colonialism and moaning about how our minerals are shipped out of our country voluntarily by black-owned South African mineral companies. That's who's selling them overseas, not white capital, not white folks, not the United States, not Canada, not the UK, but black South Africans shipping their minerals to China and around the world, and he's calling that colonialism. Well, these rail lines by the Chinese are being built not to ship minerals around the world, but to China. China, China. That's where it's all going. There's your new colonialism. There's your neocolonialism right there. China. Thank you very much. Well, Rwanda is attempting to block the United Nations support for the South African force that's in the DRC. They've written to the UN Security Council warning the international body it could spark a regional war if it provides any support to the SADC mission. The peaceful solution is the best alternative to the crisis in the eastern DRC, it says. Of course, Rwanda is accused of backing M23. Yep. The SADC mission, SAMI-DRC, is in the Congo to fight M23 rebels. In a letter to Carolyn Rodriguez Birkett, the president of the United Nations Security Council, Rwanda's Foreign Affairs Minister Vincent Biruta said it was unfair for the international body was considering supporting allies in the DRC. Also said that SAMI-DRC was not neutral in the crisis and pleaded with the UN Security Council not to support it. The government of Rwanda would like to request the United Nations Security Council to avert the escalation in the eastern DRC by not reconsidering the request to provide logistical and operational support, which could only feed into more escalation. 100%. 100% correct. Thousands of Senegalese in West African nation marched in the first authorized protest since Macky Sall postponed the election. Yesterday, thousands joined the first authorized protest in the capital. In a sign of calming tensions, the protest passed peacefully and police largely kept their distance. Macky Sall's last-minute move to delay the February 25th poll triggered traditionally stable Senegal's worst crisis in decades. The Constitutional Council intervened on Thursday, and the president, under growing pressure at home and abroad, vowed to organize elections as soon as possible, yet he failed to set a date. So, he is going to implement the court's order, but he has not set a date, according to Al Jazeera. Senegal's President Macky Sall on Friday pledged to organize presidential elections as soon as possible. The president of the republic intends to fully implement the decision of the Constitutional Court. To this end, the head of the state will, without delay, carry out the consultations necessary to organize presidential elections as soon as possible. And if you believe that, then I have some beachfront property in the Karoo, Central Karoo, that I'd like to sell you. Nigeria's currency reaches a low, a record low, as inflation is surging. How do things get so bad? Asked the Associated Press. Well, a lot of ways. Cutting fuel subsidies helped raise prices. Latest government statistics released Thursday showed inflation rose to 29.9% in January. That's the highest level since 1996. Things are not going well in Nigeria. The African Union Commission chief urges action on African instability. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Musa Faki Mahamat. He made the call on the first day of a two-day African Union summit. Wars in Sudan and the DRC are at the top of their agenda. The conflict between Israel and Hamas, poverty, climate change, and education are other key topics to be discussed. Why is the African Union discussing Israel and Hamas? It has no impact, no bearing whatsoever on Africa at all. There's nothing to do with Africa. Nothing other than the ANC interjecting its stuff, its nose, its big nose and bum into the business of Israel for national security. It has nothing to do with the African Union. This is complete waste of time for African Union diplomats who should be focused on getting member states to pay for the administration of the African Union instead of the United States and the European Union. That's what they should be focused on. Getting deadbeat African countries to actually pay for the AU, which does very little to help anybody. I know. I work there. Bleak picture, says Mahamat. AU leaders urged to tackle a litany of crises, including climate change. He blasted a failure to counter multiple unconstitutional changes of government, that would be coups in West Africa, and warned a scourge of terrorism was diverting money away from vital social needs to military spending. Sudan was bruised, torn, sinking into chaos, while Libya was divided and exposed to external interference, and the Sahel was facing a dangerous vacuum. True. Yep, Africa cannot remain arms folded and not work to promote genuine peace in the region. But that's exactly what the African Union does, while the Chinese spy on it from its headquarters in Addis Ababa. That's exactly what the African Union does, in case anybody's missed that. Well, the United Kingdom's David Cameron, former Prime Minister and current Foreign Minister, will visit the Falklands, saying the island's sovereignty is not up for discussion. The Argentines started a war there in 1982, which killed 255 British servicemen, 3 Falkland Islanders, and 649 Argentinian military personnel. British Foreign Secretary David Cameron will visit the Falklands in a high-profile demonstration that they are a valued part of the British family amid renewed Argentinian calls for talks on the future of the islands they call Isla Malvinas. Cameron's visit will be the first by a British cabinet minister since 2016. He stressed the issue of the archipelago's sovereignty is not up for discussion, while the islanders wish to be British. Argentina's President Javier Milei, who met Cameron last month, has called for the South Atlantic Islands to be handed over to Buenos Aires. Good luck with that, Javier. Maybe you should focus on your economy rather than tilting at windmills. NATO ally Denmark has pledged to give all of its artillery meant to defend NATO's northern flank. Remember, Sweden and Finland were not part of NATO. The first country in the Baltic that Russia could threaten was Denmark, with the Jutland Peninsula jutting up into the North Sea, blocking and creating a barrier between the Baltic and the North, which the Russians had to navigate around Sweden, which was a neutral country until Vladimir Putin pushed Sweden and Finland into the arms of NATO. Now, all of Scandinavia, Iceland, Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark are all NATO alliance members. After 6 decades of most of those countries not even being in NATO, only Iceland, Norway, and Denmark. Well, there you go. NATO ally pledges all of its artillery to Ukraine in boost for Kiev. Denmark has pledged its entire artillery stocks to Ukraine as Kiev issued renewed pleas for all-important military aid in the face of Russian gains in the east. They're asking us for ammunition now, artillery now, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said during the Munich Security Conference in Germany. From the Danish side, we decided to donate our entire artillery. This foolish, idiotic move by a brain-dead, leftist moron prime minister who knows nothing of national defense, giving money to the grifter in chief, will have a devastating impact to NATO's collective security. They claim that Donald Trump is the threat to NATO collective security when it's actually the leaders of Denmark, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and Estonia, who are a threat to NATO's collective security. That's a fact. Neutral Switzerland is bumping its defense spending, but this isn't really news, and Switzerland does this periodically, but the media are reporting it breathlessly. Switzerland's government plans to boost defense spending by up to 19%. Of course, famously, they've held referendums to remove the military in the past, and citizens have voted against that. Switzerland, known for being neutral in wars, is planning to boost defense spending by up to 19% over the next 4 years. Swiss government is citing a rise in global instability, including wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, gaps created when Swiss authorities cashed in on a peace dividend from the fall of the Berlin Wall decades ago. Laying out mid- and long-term range projections for military spending, Defense Minister Viola Amherd, a woman who actually knows what she's doing as opposed to the Danish Prime Minister, she holds the rotating Swiss presidency this year and said that as a result of cost-cutting measures over the last 30 years, the Army has been weakened. It would take time to make up lost ground. For the first time, we are indicating how the Army must evolve in the next 12 years. Now, that is leadership. That is a plan. That is a plan. The move reflects growing worries among security of the self-described neutral country that is all but surrounded by friends in the European Union's 27-member bloc that does not include Switzerland. But it is part of EFTA, the European Free Trade Area. So NATO, not for them, but they will continue to spend their national defense. My first trip ever to Switzerland in 1984, when I drove from Liechtenstein to Luzern, drove past air bases where jet fighters rolled out of the side of mountains as I watched them come out and then took off for operations. Switzerland maintained its neutrality during the Second World War. It was an armed neutrality. They shot down British, American, and Nazi Germany planes that violated their airspace, forced them to the ground or shooting them down, and taking all Allied and Nazi soldiers as prisoners of war. Switzerland maintains its neutrality. This is not new. They neglected it for a number of years, and now they are paying attention to it. 86 people currently here, folks. Please hit the like button. I haven't taken a look at what the health of the broadcast is. Let me take a look at that. 84 people here, 78 likes. We got some super chat revenue came in today. No new members. 354 views. The average view is 10 minutes and 50 seconds. That's a bit short. Usually we have 16 or longer. Maybe it's because we're just 50-some minutes into the broadcast. Thanks for being here, folks. Be sure to hit that like button. It costs you nothing but a moment of your time. It's free. It's free. Absolutely. I guarantee you, it will cost you nothing, and it doesn't hurt. You know, if you push the like button, you may experience a release of endorphins.
That was easy.
The scientist number one is Super Report. What? What's going on here, scientists? I'm going to take a break in the news action here and take a look at Super Brew. And I have fallen to low heights here after leading Super Brew all season. Matt Canale displaced me yesterday, and now the scientist has displaced me. We can't have this. Let's take a look at this very quickly. Let me look at Super Brew. Come on, if it loads up here. All right. The scientist is number one, and I've fallen to number 3. Matt Canale has been dethroned, and I've moved to number 3. But we still have games today. The scientist got that match point, got me beat by 1 there. He is up by up over a point over me. Wow, you've slid ahead of me there, scientist. Man, oh man, oh man. I'm not happy about that. It's tight at the top of the leaderboard in our Super Brew pool. The top three have really close this season. Ulster. What? Oh, no. Is it over or is it still live? I've got Ulster winning by 5 and they're losing. I got 1, 2, 3 games correct yesterday and match point and still fell down the standings. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 consecutive games correct. I picked 6 of 7 right, and I fall in the standings. That is a tough Super Brew pool, folks. That is a tough Super Brew pool. I got 6 out of 7 games. I got 3 of those games, both points, and I still fell in the standings. Man, oh man, oh man. Ulster lost. That sucks. That sucks. That hurt me. That hurt me. Well, back to the news. Ireland national basketball team, the women, have been blocked on the Meta platform, and it's unclear why. In a statement, the association noted the added attention brought by Ireland's match against Israel. There's the Irish national side. A lot of short girls on that team, man. Basketball Ireland's Instagram page has been permanently disabled. A statement said the association lost access to the Instagram page on Sunday, February 11th, and on Wednesday, the 14th, it was on Valentine's Day. How sweet is that? The Irish girls lost their Facebook page. Oh, no, they're permanently disabled on the 14th, they were told. It's being appealed by Basketball Ireland, as they said there's no legitimate reason to do so, by Meta as its national governing body, only posting about basketball. It noted the added media and social media attention to lead up to the aftermath of Ireland's game against Israel in the FIBA Women's Euro Basketball qualifier. But it said nothing was posted on their social media channels during this time, before or since merits this decision by Meta. Now, that's a matter of opinion. But we do know that the Irish women were shameful scumbags in refusing to shake the hands of their opponents in a politically motivated piece of garbage. Yeah, so that's the truth of the matter here, folks. That is the truth of the matter here. Basketball Ireland's Instagram account permanently disabled following fraught game with Israel. Yep, their Instagram account permanently disabled. Prior to the game, the Israeli team had posed for photos with armed Israeli soldiers, and one Israeli player accused the Irish team of being anti-Semitic. Now, that's not appropriate by the Israeli team. The Irish team refused to shake hands with the Israeli players on the day of the game. Well, and then Meta suspended them. That's interesting. Meta doesn't usually stand up for minorities. It only, certain minorities it stands up for. Russia claims full control in a major victory for it in Avdiivka, saying Ukrainian troops are still in the town. Biggest gain since capturing Bakhmut back in May, as the war is set to enter its third year. Russia says it has full control of the Ukrainian town of Avdiivka after Ukraine withdrew, adding some Ukrainian troops are still holed up in a vast Soviet-era coke plant following one of the most intense battles of the war. The fall of Avdiivka is Russia's biggest gain since capturing Bakhmut back in May of last year, and it comes almost 2 years today since President Putin triggered a full-scale war by ordering the invasion of Ukraine. Russia's Ministry of Defense said its troops had advanced 8.6 kilometers in that part of the 1,000-kilometer front line, and that Russian troops were pressing forward after deadly urban battles left the town almost completely depopulated. Wreck. Putin hailed the fall of Avdiivka as an important victory and congratulated Russian troops. Ukraine said it had withdrawn its soldiers to save troops from being fully surrounded after months of fierce fighting. Well, there you go. So a major victory for Russia, apparently. Ireland is spending tons of money deporting criminal alien invaders who are fraudulent asylum seekers. And the Irish Independent is upset that they're spending money on it, not that these criminals have invaded Ireland. 20,000 euros was spent on deportation flights for one asylum seeker as they deported people last year. The Department of Justice spent an estimated 270,000 euros on deportation flights last year, with tickets for a single operation in Argentina costing more than 20,000 euros. On certain long-distance trips, business class travel had to be booked for Garda, of course, the police, carrying out the forced removal. Why do the Garda have to have business class? Why don't they travel economy like the rest of us? I served in the military for 36 and a half years, never once had a business class seat, always economy, back of the bus. Why are the Irish police special? Yep. They say they get a business class due to the length of the distance involved. Well, sorry. The rest of us have to ride coach. You can ride coach too. You're just a cop. So how much money does Ukraine need from the West? The grifters in Ukraine need lots of money from the West. Yeah. This report in Euronews says that Ukraine is spending most of its budget, over half of its budget on defense, 82 billion euros for the defense sector. Ukraine's finance ministry estimates it will need $37.3 billion or 34 billion euros in external contributions throughout 2024, slightly down from the amount received in 2023. In a written statement to Euronews, the ministry said it expects Brussels to soon approve a 50 billion euro special fund known as the Ukraine facility that will gradually roll out over the next 4 years, while Washington promised to wire $11.8 billion in financial assistance. When will this grift end? We are financing a corrupt government in Eastern Europe for what? They're not democratic. They're not honest. They're not helping NATO. They're not defending Western freedom. We're simply getting people killed. Well, speaking of not doing the right things, let's turn our attention to North America and juicy Trudeau. Trudeau's welcome mat for immigrants wears thin amid Canada housing crunch. Yep. Support for immigration falls to a 3-decade low because population growth is the fastest in 6 decades. Annual rental prices have gone up 7.4% in just the fourth quarter of last year because of this mass in-migration meant to water down and dilute Canada's First Nations and its European ancestry. It was Trudeau's father, Pierre, who championed immigration as prime minister back in the early 1970s, promoting multiculturalism as a government policy. Over time, Canadians have come to see the country's diversity as part of its identity, like the maple leaf in hockey. But when international students led a surge in immigration in the wake of the pandemic, the public mood soured as rental costs soared and services like healthcare came under strain. Yep, immigration went from historically high levels of support among Canadians in 2020 to a 3-decade low at the end of 2023. In October, 44.5% of Canadians told a survey that there were too many immigrants, citing a lack of affordable housing as the main reason, up from 30%, a 30-year low of just 14% in February of 2022. Wow. Canada's population growth versus rental inflation. Look at this. Look at this. Unconstrained invasion of Canada. Canada breaches immigration target in 2023. The country has capped admissions for new residents at 485,000. The cap will be raised to 500,000. Wait a second. Canada has immigration limits? They limit how many people come to the country? We're told that's racist. We're not allowed to determine who comes into our country, according to jackass Joe Biden and his corrupt administration, his regime in Washington, and the demon rats. No. We're racist and xenophobes because we want to control and stem the flow of immigration so it's manageable. But Canada openly does it. And The Economist 5 years ago praised them as the system to follow, claiming their system was fairer than when Trump was president. Of course, that was all a bunch of malarkey because Canada only takes immigrants who are wealthy and wise. They won't take the dregs of society. They don't take the Honduran dishwashers and the Guatemalan raspberry pickers and the MS-13 gangs from Mexico. They don't take them. They deny them entry, but they will take Pakistani doctors and Indian dentists and coders and programmers from Nigeria. Yeah. Fair? No. Really rapacious. Pillaging the world of its human capital is Canada. And Canadians have had enough. They have had enough. Well, I see our numbers are dropping. People must have gone to another channel to watch what they wanted. New York's governor, Kathy Hochul, the person who helped oust Governor Grope a lot so she could become governor. Kathy Hochul, the person responsible for the lawlessness in the state, the Empire State of New York, makes some uncomplimentary comments about Canada and apologized for it. But hey, she really wasn't off the mark. New York governor apologized for implying it is Israel's right to destroy Gaza. That is not what she said, CBC, a leftist publication run by the corrupt leftist fascist government of Canada. New York Governor Kathy Hochul apologized on Friday for remarks she made at a Jewish philanthropy event in New York City that went viral on social media and suggested Israel had justification to destroy Gaza following the October 7th Hamas attack. She said, if Canada someday ever attacked Buffalo, New York, I'm sorry, my friends, there would be no Canada the next day, Hochul said in a portion of her speech. That's a natural reaction. You have a right to defend yourself and make sure it never happens again, and that is Israel's right. Now, on Friday, she apologized for using inappropriate analogy that I now realize could be hurtful to members of our community. Yeah, shut up, Kathy Hochul. Leftists. Well, Los Angeles Times launches an opinion editorial piece in which it bemoans the conduct of Fani Willis. She's jeopardized the nation. Fani Willis has put America at risk with her behavior because now they can't get Trump. Fani Willis's inexplicably bad judgment has endangered a case and the nation, says the Los Angeles Times, by Robin Abkarian. At this point, it doesn't really matter whether Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis benefited financially from a relationship with Nathan Wade, the outside prosecutor she hired to help oversee the election interference racketeering case against former President Trump and 18 others, several of whom have already pled guilty. That doesn't mean they're guilty. That just means they couldn't afford lawyers. After watching her testify for nearly 2 hours on Thursday, I think she made a convincing case that she did not, if anything, spend more money on him than he did on her. But by engaging in a romantic relationship with Wade, she handed her opponents on a golden platter an opening to challenge her integrity, an excuse to charge her with conflict of interest, and a backdoor way to stymie the strong criminal case against Trump. It's not a strong criminal case, and it never has been. It's mind-boggling and so disappointing. Two mature adults, officers of the court, experienced attorneys, could not find it themselves to put their romantic inclinations on hold while working on the most important case of their careers. Well, of course, I'm sorry to tell you this, Robin, but the problem with this, of course, is she's an arrogant leftist asshat. As all these clowns like Alvin Bragg, every one of these, the judge in the New York case with a ridiculous $350 million judgment against Trump and $4 million against his sons who committed no crimes whatsoever. This ridiculous nonsense. There is no strong case here. It's just hyperbole and smoke and mirrors. And she's arrogant, as all the leftists are, thinking they're untouchable and their behavior is not beyond reproach, or is beyond reproach, excuse me. No, she caused this. That's the problem. Well, truckers refused to carry loads into New York City after this ridiculous judgment. Trump-loving truckers refusing to drive to New York City after $355 million fraud ruling. Trump-supporting truckers are saying they're refusing to drive to New York City after the former president was slapped with a $355 million fine in the fraud case. Conservative social media influencer and trucker goes by Chicago Ray posts a video clip in which he claims that some of his colleagues are going to stop making deliveries to New York City to protest the ruling. I've been on the radio talking to drivers for the past hour, and I've talked to about 10 drivers, and they're going to start refusing loads for New York City starting on Monday. He said he's already spoken to some drivers that work with him and told their bosses they won't go to the Big Apple. I don't know how far across the country this or how many truckers are going to start denying loads, but I'll tell you, you F around and find out, said Ray. The truckers said their bosses ain't going to care if we deny loads, we'll just go elsewhere. Do you know how effing hard it is to get in New York City with one of these MFers? Ray claimed that 95% of truckers support the former president in an ex post. Well, that's yet to be proven. Yep. Anyway, but truckers are not going to drive. So New York will begin to starve to death very quickly if that, in fact, is true. Their anti-transportation government there under Eric Adams has already made it difficult for truckers to enter the city. And now they're just going to give up on it altogether because of this ludicrous judgment against Donald Trump. Now, Hillary Clinton, the person with severe cognitive problems, inability to walk with her balance, Hillary Clinton, the thoroughly reprehensible classified document thief, Hillary Clinton, who violated the Espionage Act, Hillary Clinton, the reprehensible former senator from New York, carpetbagger, Hillary Clinton, friend of Vince Foster, Hillary Clinton, is claiming that Trump will quit NATO. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a free, no cost, no tuition charge for Hillary Rodham Clinton. Let me help you out. You see, the office you desired, President of the United States, is constrained by this document. It's known as the Constitution, Hillary. I realize that you're not very familiar with the Constitution, but this document creates a system of checks and balances in which the three co-equal branches of the federal government, the Supreme Court, the legislature, and the executive branch are co-equal. And there are checks and balances against all of them. Donald Trump cannot quit NATO, Hillary. I realize you and the brain-dead leftist media aren't very bright and missed Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. You missed that in your youth because you were busy running around in Wellesley, busy reading Saul Alinsky. When we were watching Schoolhouse Rock, it was a little bit after your time. But you must learn the Constitution, Hillary Clinton, and stop lying and gaslighting Americans. Hillary Clinton says Trump will quit NATO. Yeah. Clinton urged delegates at the Munich Security Conference to take her one-time presidential rival's tough talk literally and seriously. He will pull us out of NATO. She told the attendee, why is Hillary Clinton at the European Security Conference? This woman has undermined security on a global basis. She empowered Vladimir Putin by selling America's uranium to Russia. She empowered Russia by undermining U.S. foreign policy in her buddy-cozy relationship with Vladimir Putin. Undermined Ukraine as our foreign minister by precipitating the Orange Revolution. No pun intended there. Yeah. Hillary Clinton, another threat to security, and she's there. Thousands of veterans fell victim to a scam by the Veterans Administration in a bait and switch in which the Veterans Administration foolishly created a program to allow veterans to forego payments on their Veterans Administration mortgages during the pandemic. And then suddenly canceled the program. The program would have allowed veterans throughout the course of this suspension of their loan as if it's frozen in time. Kind of like an in-school deferment when a student goes back to university, their student loan freezes at that moment at the rate of inflation, but does not, or not of interest, but does not increase. No interest grows on the debt while they're in school. And that was a similar situation here, a forbearance in which veterans who lost their job or couldn't work because of COVID would freeze their loans in place. And then at some point in the future, they would resume as if there had never been a piece of time in there. When you monkey with this system and then you abandon people, you get the following. And this is the mess we're sitting in now. 40,000 veterans who served honorably. Thousands of vets fall victim to a bait and switch by the Veterans Administration. The National Public Radio actually reports on this story. Lawmakers summoned to the head of the Department of Veterans Affairs loan program, John Bell, to Capitol Hill and asked him to explain how the VA is going to fix the debacle that left many vets in danger of losing their homes. He said, "I don't know. We're looking for a solution to be able to help 40,000 borrowers stave off foreclosure." The VA has been scrambling since an NPR investigation revealed that it pulled the plug on a key program while thousands of vets were still in the middle of it, effectively turning a well-meaning pandemic aid effort into a bait-and-switch trap for homeowners. At issue is what's called the COVID mortgage forbearance, set up by Congress after the pandemic hit people who lost income. It gave homeowners with federally backed loans a sanctioned way to skip mortgage payments. The missed payments would get moved to the back of the loan term so the homeowners got back on their feet. They could just resume their normal payments without any accrued interest. But in October 2022, the VA simply abruptly ended their program, stranding tens of thousands of veterans who were told they now need to come up with all the missed payments at once. So they let them be in this program, and then 2 years later, they said, "Oh, it's suspended. Now you have to give us all the money that wasn't paid in those 2 years." Are you serious? Are you serious? Wow. This is insane. This is what happens when you monkey with finances. How am I going to come up with $23,000? How am I going to come up with that, says Edmund Garcia, a combat veteran who served in Iraq. His wife lost her job during the pandemic, and he called his loan servicer in 2022. He's offered a forbearance. After 3 months, Garcia says he tried to start paying again, was told the program had ended. The mortgage company said if he couldn't afford to pay back all his missed payments in lump sum, he couldn't resume making his regular payments. So he fell further behind. Then just weeks ago, he was notified that all the missed payments were due now. You know, what am I supposed to do? The paperwork from this lender said he could sell his home in a short sale as one option. I'm going to lose my home. What am I going to do with my kids? Unbelievable. Meantime, many veterans say their loan servicers are still pushing them to either pay all the missed payments immediately or accept costly loan modifications. Garcia is a first-generation American. His parents are from Honduras. He was the first in his family to go to college, and he said joining the military was supposed to be part of that American dream. The VA home loan is part of a GI Bill, and since the end of the Second World War, it's been giving veterans a leg up into the middle class. He served 4 years, including combat with the Army's 101st Airborne Division in Iraq, when a bullet got him in the ankle. My goodness. If he can't pay back all the missed payments, he was offered a loan modification that would result in a much bigger monthly bills. Garcia's own home mortgage was at 2.4%. The offer would increase that to 7.1% with payments $700 a month higher. This is how we treat our veterans in this country. Meanwhile, all the other federal programs that gave forbearance to people who didn't deserve anything, who didn't serve this country, who simply had loans because they were gifted loans because of their skin pigmentation or their social status by a corrupt leftist government in Washington, D.C., they get to continue not paying back their loans with interest. But this is what we do to combat veterans, to military veterans. We screw them in this corrupt country. Unbelievable. 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 Well, Estonian member of government says that Donald Trump was right. Of course he was right. I've told you he was right about this when he called out NATO. Donald Trump right in the NATO criticism, allied official says. Former President Donald Trump's repeated broadsides against NATO have been met with simultaneous winces and nods from among the alliance's 31 members, most of whom are still not meeting the bloc's cornerstone military spending. Only 11 countries meet the 2%, and 2 of them are fraudulent, UK and Germany, which aren't really meeting it. As with many aspects of his foreign policy, Trump's campaign against NATO is a bombastic expression of long-held bipartisan American frustration. All the different U.S. presidents have said the same thing. Europe must pay more. Everybody must pay the 2%. This, of course, came from Foreign Minister of Estonia, Margus Cishakna. He told Newsweek on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. So they're admitting this while demonizing Donald Trump. They're admitting it, demonizing Donald Trump. This mayor in Illinois continues to grab headlines with all kinds of outrageous claims against her. Illinois mayor is now accused of shutting down businesses that refuse to donate to her campaign and blasting Rihanna's biatch, better have my money, at board meetings after being slammed for using city money to fund her glamorous looks. Illinois Mayor Tiffany Henyard is accused of shutting down businesses that refuse to donate to her political campaign. One resident claimed that Henyard forced the closure of his trucking business after he refused to renew a $3,500 contribution to her political fund. Wow. The first female mayor of a tiny Illinois village is now accused of shutting down businesses that refuse to donate to her campaign. Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard is accused of using her official position within the town to retaliate against those who do not comply with her wishes. Residents claim she adopts the persona of movie gangster Nino Brown from the 1991 film New Jack City during official meetings, dressing in an ensemble designed to instill fear. People look at politics like a joke. It's like a mockery right now because of all this stuff. Village of Dalton trustee Kiana Belcher told the Post she comes to board meetings dressed like Nino Brown. During the meeting, she reportedly signaled for a DJ to play Rihanna's Biatch, Better Have My Money, while fully committing to her Nino Brown persona, even carrying a small stuffed dog reminiscent of a scene from the movie. And there, of course, is Wesley Snipes as Nino Brown in that movie. Here she is, living up luxury. One resident, Lawrence Gardner, claimed that Henyard forced the closure of his trucking business after he refused to renew a $3,500 contribution to her political campaign. I made the payment. Then every year she started coming in and required the same thing, and we had a problem about that. Yep. She has a $300,000 annual salary in a small village. $300,000. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the leftists just hate this. They're going to hate this. And I've been telling you about this for years. I have told you for years that the United States, the Eastern Seaboard in particular, and the southern states have been reforested at an amazing rate. The forest cover in the eastern United States, east of the Mississippi, is greater today than it was when Europeans landed in the New World in the 17th century. Fact. Because of massive tree planting that's taken place over the past 6 decades. We have more tree cover, and we have lower temperatures, and we suck up more carbon dioxide than ever before. Yet the leftists are trying to scare us with climate. Climate, ignoring this phenomenon. And of all places, The Guardian, the leftist British hate-wanking publication, The Guardian, actually tells a truthful story. It's shocking. They've rediscovered science at The Guardian. Can you imagine this, folks? The Guardian discovers science. Very cool. Trees stalling effects of global heating in eastern U.S. Vast reforestation is a major reason for the warming hole across parts of the U.S. where temperatures have flatlined or cooled. So we're not getting warmer. Global warming is not happening. Climate change is not happening here, according to this story in the Guardian. Trees provide innumerable benefits to the world, from food and shelter to oxygen. But researchers have found now that the dramatic rebound in the eastern U.S. has delivered further stunning feat, the curtailing of soaring temperatures caused by climate crisis. While the U.S., like the rest of the world, has heated up since industrial times due to the burning of fossil fuels, scientists have long been puzzled by a so-called warming hole over parts of the U.S. southeast where temperatures have flatlined or even cooled, despite unmistakable broader warming trend. The major reason for this anomaly, the new study finds, is the vast reforestation of much of the eastern United States following the initial loss of large numbers of trees in the wake of European settlement in America. Such large expanses have been reforested in the past century, with enough trees sprouting back to cover an area larger than England. And that has helped stall the effect of global warming. So if you look at these two charts on the left-hand side, you see the area that has been reforested. Let me zoom up for that for you guys. Okay, on the left, you see the area that has been reforested in the past century, including big chunks of Pennsylvania. Yep. And then you look on the right. Look at that. The eastern seaboard, the south, is cooling, not warming. Whoa! What's going on here? I thought we were all going to die in a cataclysmic ball of flame from the mouths of the leftists. Now, here's a typical fake media story with a fake headline purporting to be something that it's not. This is a story in CNBC, the cable news network, saying that the U.S. can learn from Norway when it comes to electric vehicle adoption. Now, they're going to tell us that we can learn from Norway. You ready for this? All right, here we go. What the U.S. can learn from Norway when it comes to EV adoption. That sounds interesting. Norway boasts the highest electric vehicle adoption rate in the world. Some 82% of new car sales were EVs in 2023. 7.6% of new car sales were electric in the U.S. last year. In the world's largest auto market, China, 24% of new car sales were EVs. Our goal is to make all new cars by 2025 will be zero-emission vehicles, said Ragnald Striestad, the state secretary of Norwegian Ministry of Climate. They have a Ministry of Climate and Environment. I think we're going to reach that goal. The Norwegian government began incentivizing the purchase of EVs at the expense of consumers with free parking in the 1990s, the use of bus lanes, which no one else used, no tolls for these cars, and most importantly, no taxes on zero-emission vehicles, meaning all the other motorists and taxpayers carried the burden of the rich who had EVs. But it wasn't until Tesla began making cars available 10 years ago that sales started to take off. Okay, electric cars are maybe a third the price of gasoline because we have close to 100% hydropower. It's cheap, it's available, it's renewable. So that's a big advantage, says Peter Hagenlund, Assistant Secretary General for the Norwegian EV Association. Aha. So what can we learn from Norway about EVs? That we should have them? No, they don't say what we should learn from them. They imply that we should use them because Norway has 84% of new sales EVs. But what they tell you at the bottom of the article in this fake news story by CNBC is that Norway can do this because Norway isn't making the EVs, they're importing them. So they're not damaging their environment by bringing these polluting vehicles into Norway. And they don't have to worry about electricity generation because they have hydroelectric power providing almost 100% of its electricity. So yeah, they can, at the expense of other countries' environment, do this lovely fantasy. The United States can't bring in 12 million to 16 million new vehicles every year that are electric vehicles and supply them electricity with our grid. It will not work. So that's a fake news story by those clowns. Plenty of clowns out there. Let me get to the chat and see what people have been saying in the chat here. That's your news for today. Get back here a little bit. The DA said nothing about BRICS. Well, BRICS doesn't matter, Jonathan. What did you want them to say about BRICS? BRICS is a joke. It has no impact whatsoever. It's not even... See, let me be very clear about this. There is no treaty. There is a treaty for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO has a treaty. Members have obligations that's been ratified by parliaments and by Congress. That's why we have NATO. ASEAN had a treaty. We had a treaty for that. Yeah. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations. The ANZUS had one. Australia, New Zealand, U.S. had a treaty. These are treaty obligations. BRICS has no formal agreement. It doesn't exist. There's no treaty obliging South Africa or Brazil or Russia, India, China, or any of these other countries to do anything. There are no barriers lowered as a consequence of BRICS. There is no mutual defense as a consequence of BRICS. There is no diplomatic recognition of BRICS. It's a fantasy. Why would the DA even address it? It's a joke, unless they want to criticize it. Absolutely a joke. Scientist says, who is Rise Zansi? Isn't that the creation of Musi Maimani? Isn't he the one that created that? Rebecca Oppenheimer, Jonathan's laughing. Yeah, I'm laughing too. Debbie says, hit the button if she's still here. Brian Lawrenson. Slippery Pickle says, I thought the EFF manifesto was Juju's autistic interpretations. That's funny. Okay, and then we got... Garrett says, the old age pension paid by government is for those who meet the poverty criteria under a pension. Yes, I know, but the story is factually incorrect in that it doesn't point out that gifted pensions that weren't earned are what they're talking about. Many people earn their pension through their labor. Most people earn their pension through their labor. They don't get it handed to them. In the old days, you didn't get a Social Security check unless you worked. You paid into the system, and then your benefits were based on that. Now they just give money out to criminal alien invaders who come here, and people who migrate to this country who are retired get Social Security checks after they come here, never paid in the system. It's wrong. My mom's money was stolen at Steelport. South Africa has a great sense of humor. Me and my sister look after her now. I feel no shame. She is on welfare. Poverty is a great tool to ostracize. No, Paul, I think you're misunderstanding here. No. See, let's be very clear about this. Handouts to people who never earned. Your mom had money stolen from her. She's not a case of a person who never earned, who never contributed to society. She was robbed. So very different. And let's be very clear about this. I lived in abject poverty as a kid, and I will never, ever live in poverty again. It's a demeaning, soul-crushing, reinforcing, generational-long, miserable experience to be in poverty. In high school, do you imagine what it did to the confidence and character of a young man who played sports but had to walk home 5 miles every night when everyone else had their own car to drive to and from practice? And when I had to walk home 15 miles when I played baseball. When I couldn't afford to buy my varsity jacket. Gifted memberships coming up now. When I couldn't afford to buy my varsity jacket, which everybody had. I never got a varsity jacket. It sounds trivial to you, but it compiles. It adds up. When I went and got my lunch every day, it was a free lunch because I was poor. George, become a member. Thank you for that. Soul crushing. When I would have to go to the marketplace on North Washington Avenue opposite the Lackawanna County Jail in Scranton, Pennsylvania, taking oversized, L.C. Jacobs, taking oversized food stamps, bigger than a dollar bill, in colors like this, purple and green and orange that stand out for $1, $2, and $5 amounts and $10 amounts to buy food, David. To buy food. Because my parents who got the food stamps wouldn't go. And I pay standing in line with food stamps, embarrassed while other people pay cash for their actual food. It's soul crushing. The case of your other, Paul, is a completely different story. It's not related to that. I grew up with that miserable situation, and as a consequence, made a plan never to ever be on the dole. And Rian von Ryan, thank you for that. Being on the dole as a consequence of unfortunate circumstances is one thing, which appears to be the case of your mother. It's quite another to never earn in society and to slide right into generational poverty. That's what I'm talking about. I know it's probably a stupid question, and the farm murders get resolved. Very few do. Very few do. It's not a stupid question. We don't know the result of who killed Brendan Horner. Still hasn't been resolved. Or Edward Neumeister. Or the Indian woman in the Ayub farm. Very few of these murders are ever solved because the police don't bother to properly investigate them. Number one, because we suspect, but can't prove, that police are involved in many of these killings. The 3-year-old, yep. There was the 10 pounds from Usina. Thank you for that. Did I say euros? It was 10 pounds. The world has gone crazy, says Emil. Maybe the ANC rejects the MK as a party for these elections. You'll see some real anarchy. Perhaps. Hamas did that with twins at kibbutz, killed our parents and left the babies there to cry and attract people to their cries. Yeah, I know, Deborah. I know. Yeah, rugby was only good because I narrated it. Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate that. And thank you for the 350 rand. Okay. And who else? Usina's here, catching up with the news. And Grant Bernardo, yep, and the unions killed the textile business in South Africa, frame textiles being one of them. Yeah. Well, what really killed the textile business in South Africa is an artificial advantage, which people forget about. The multi-fiber agreement was an artificial rule put in place by the World Trade Organization under the General Agreement Trade and Tariffs. They allowed countries to take source material, cotton and wool, from one place, ship it to a second place, like South Africa, Botswana, Swaziland, or Lesotho, manufacture textiles there, and then ship it and avoid the quotas in Europe, Canada, and North America. And that benefited these countries. As a consequence, hundreds of thousands of jobs were created artificially in Southern Africa in the textile industry. And then they disappeared overnight. Over 170,000, if I recall correctly, 170,000 textile jobs disappeared in Lesotho in a matter of 3 months when the multi-fiber agreement expired around 2006, I think it was, January 2006. Government's place to interject themselves. Okay. Daughters are in the rag trade. Yep. Okay. Who paid for the trip to Russia? Well, that's a good question. Did you get my Mabalula email? Perhaps, Ken, but I don't know. I was busy yesterday and haven't checked my mail last night. Okay, what else we got here in the chat? Chat. Menage a trois. What's your take on Navalny's death? Oh, probably murdered by the Russians. I have no evidence of it, but I mean, he shouldn't be in prison. It was all cooked up. He never should have left Germany. He's a fool for leaving Germany. Sweden, Denmark, and Finland will now send their sons to die in other people's wars, mostly for proliferation of lies. Well, yeah, Paul. I don't think they're going to send them, but there's a possibility of that. Yep. Haven't heard about the Falklands for years. Remember Margaret Thatcher's Falkland War? Oh, I talked about it previously on this program. I'm number one in the Super Brew poll. Yes, you are, scientist, because I think that both Matt Canali and I must have picked Ulster to win that game. Yeah, the Pope has Swiss guards. RJ says, is China evidently anti-Semitic, anti-Islamic? If yes, how will the alliance between South Africa, China, Iraq, Israel? Well, I don't know that they're anti-Islamic. They're certainly anti-Uyghur because they see the Uyghurs to be a thorn in their side, these immigrants or these Muslims out in the West. So there's certainly that. But I don't know. But yeah, it could be a problem. So much news, been out of the loop with my mom being in hospital. Sadly, she passed away. Oh my goodness, Emil. Folks, can we get some condolences to Emil? You've probably done it already. He wrote this about a half hour ago. Emil Therrett, I'm so sorry for the loss of your mom. And here you are on the program. My goodness. It's so good to see you here. You know, a lot of respect for people who go on with life while they're dealing with tragedy like this. I remember when my mother passed away, within 45 minutes, I did a live broadcast on my channel. For folks who remember that, I did a live broadcast trying to pay tribute to my mom. Yep, when she died. So Steve sends condolences. Erica sends them. Can we get some more condolences for Emil for the loss of his mom? So sorry to hear that, Emil. John Dawes, Muslims are breeding the Western countries out, says John Dawes. Not a fan of the Ospreys. They're my local rivals, but I'm happy they beat an Irish team, says Fleshin. Yeah, in the airborne, we had first class, first to get off the plane. Yeah, exactly. The risk of sounding cynical after the dust settles. The guys in the know will say the lot. They got rid of their old ordinance and managed to invest U.S. pensions, grabbing up distressed industries. I think you're mixing two different things there. If you're talking about Denmark, yeah, getting rid of the old ordinance and getting rid of their artillery, replace it with new ones. Yeah, that's a fair point. What's happening in world outcomes? I thought I was the only person getting poorer by the month. No, we're all getting poor. Canada takes Punjabi farmers as well. There you go, Fleshin. BlackRock and Vanguard are the world's largest asset managers with combined $309 trillion in assets under management. Is it that high? $309 trillion. I don't know it was that high. Yeah, and what's the point? It's hard as the Cheetahs are popular in Lanelli, and seeing them play for the Jacks is hard. Okay. Sue says, good day, Colonel. Everyone, I'm late, so perhaps I missed your comment on Malema wanting to march. The U.S. Embassy is shut down due to sport. No, I didn't see that. That wasn't in the news when I came on. Has it come out since then? You didn't miss anything, Sue. I didn't see that, so I'll have to make a video. I did make a video yesterday about Julius Malema running his mouth about Bafana. Some people watch that. Not everybody. I wonder if we're even up to 1,000 yet views on that. It was 925 last time I looked, 968. So obviously YouTube has killed that. It's not getting anywhere. So let me take a look at that video and see what the numbers are now. 935 there. The total is 968. Yeah, it's flatline. They're not telling anybody about it. YouTube has killed it. We're just getting 20 views per hour. Yep. So yeah, that one I did last night. I don't even talk in that video. It's pretty cool. So for those who want to watch it, hang a second here. This is kind of how it starts out. So let me just do this real quick. Oops, I got an ad there. Let me play my ad and get through that. So it's about there. So I'm actually getting advert money. I must get like, a tenth of a cent for this ad playing on my channel. So I'm going to skip it because it's 2 minutes of ads. I don't want that. So here we go. This is the video. I'm not going to show you all this, just a couple seconds of it. Please go watch this video on my channel when you get a chance. I produced it last night. Political opportunism, not fanatical support.
We knew they are arriving at early hours of the morning, and the most likelihood is that the place will be so empty. It must not be selective and racialized.
Must not be selective and racialized, but that's exactly what Julius Malema does to it there. Yep, that's exactly what he did in that video. He racialized it. Yep, that's exactly what he does. Juju racializes everything. That's what kind of clown he is. We're 5 subscribers away from 14,500. I hope we get those soon. Can only believe in capitalism. Only elite can carry on with reward. No, that's not true, Paul. It's not true. Why can... Oh, gosh. Capitalism is very simple. Supply and demand. A free marketplace in which people are able to exchange their services and their goods freely without intrusion by the state. Now, we can argue that laissez-faire capitalism with no oversight from the state can lead to bad outcomes, monopolies, oligarchies, abuse. True. And that's why a state has a place and a right to ensure a level playing field. You can take someone to court when they've not held up to the terms of agreement. You can sue someone for their negligence or for harming you in a capital system. But the states place us not to put subsidies to ensure that people pay triple the world price for sugar here in America. As a consequence, we wind up with a perverse outcome that they use high fructose corn syrup from maize, which is grown to feed cattle and grown to make ethanol, which damages our engines, and grown to inject into our food. It's a highly unhealthy substance, which is used as an artificial sweetener. Rather than use actual cane sugar, the distortion marketplace has a reverberation across the board, affecting much more than simply the sugarcane industry. It affects the entire soft drinks industry. It affects the entire food industry. It affects the entire energy market. This state intrusion. Capitalism is a beautiful concept. Capitalism with minimal state intrusion, simply to ensure a level playing field, is a beautiful system, Paul. You're not seeing capitalism anywhere in the world. The closest you see to it is a place like Singapore. That's it. Very few places have capitalism. Hong Kong once had capitalism. It doesn't exist there anymore. Why can't you believe in capitalism? Only the elite carry on the world. Look at the socialist countries. Who have the highest levels of inequality? According to the Gini coefficient. The most unequal country in the world is South Africa, followed by Botswana and Brazil and China. The U.S. is way down on that list, even though we have inequality. But our inequality doesn't matter because most people live well above the standard of anyone else on the planet. The most unequal country in the world is communist South Africa, with a pseudo-capital system in which they enrich the elites through BEE, corruption, and patronage at state-owned enterprises. And they ban the introduction of free market principles, like anybody building power plants, banned until a couple years ago, when their failures became so pervasive they had no choice but to allow the private sector to contribute electricity. You couldn't build over 1 megawatt of power. You would be fined and shut down, locked up in prison. Then it's 10 megawatts. Now they've lifted it entirely. That's not a free market. That's not capitalism. Capitalism hasn't failed you, Paul. Socialists have failed you. In America, in South Africa, in China, in Russia. Come on, man. Don't attack capitalism. It's beautiful. USA ex-Navy guy murdered in Cape Town. I didn't see he was in the Navy. You guys are talking about the rugby there. Devet Martins is here. Welcome, Devet. These were not unfortunate circumstances. It was theft. I suspect there are people who believe they can rob pensioners. Okay, Paul, you're parsing here. I said two things. I said unfortunate circumstances, which could be like an earthquake or a tidal wave or your company's business going out of business after you just started working there and you haven't had a chance to save and invest for the future. Those are unfortunate circumstances. Or you're hit with a case of someone in your family with cancer or a high healthcare cost, which wipes out your savings. Those are unfortunate. Your mother was robbed. That was the second circumstance I said. Come on, Paul. Come on, man. You gotta listen closely. Suspect that there are people who believe they can rob pensions because they can default to state pensions. Well, why isn't it prosecuted, Paul? That's the bigger question. That's nothing to do with capitalism. That's cronyism. Why was the case of your mother's pensions theft not investigated? Who failed? That's who you hold accountable, not capitalism. Johannes Barbarossa. Hey, wow. Barbarossa. Redbeard. Just imagine African counterintelligence robs pensioners for a cash injection expense of ANC via welfare. I don't even understand what that means, Paul. And there's the condolences for Emil. Thank you guys for putting the condolences up there. Yep. All right. What's your solution for the farm subsidies in the USA? End them. Immediately. Menage a trois. In the 1970s, late 1970s, I ran a dairy farm from 79 to 82 on a small 17-acre holding in hilly Appalachia in southeast Ohio. Received not 1 cent from the government, not 1 cent. Paid for feed, paid for vet bills, bought the cattle, paid for all the equipment, paid for the pumps, paid for the fuel to run the generator, and somehow managed to sell milk for $1 to $1.50 a gallon and butter and make money off of that. Didn't lose money, didn't make a lot, but made money. Meanwhile, the large industrial dairy producers were subsidized by the government, the food or the Department of Agriculture, and the milk they were selling in Kroger's, that's our ShopRite, Checkers equivalent, Kroger's was selling for $3.75 a gallon in 1981. $3.75 a gallon. We were selling it for $1, $1.50 and making money. Stop subsidies. Stealing from one group of people to benefit another group of people is immoral, and it's wrong economically. Stop them altogether. Full stop. If a business cannot survive on its own, then its business model is flawed. If people can't grow strawberries and make a profit, then they're doing something wrong, unless goods are being dumped in their marketplace like the Chinese do by dumping steel in the U.S. and the Chinese do by dumping microprocessors here. That's a different story. The U.S. was accused of dumping chicken in South Africa. Not the case. U.S. consumers don't eat chicken feet by and large. They don't eat chicken livers by and large. And that stuff was going to waste. It wound up as offal. And rather than do that, they saw a market in South Africa where people will eat chicken feet and other parts of chicken. And so South Africa's chicken producers are small, not heavily industrialized, like American chicken producers. So our poultry producers can produce chicken products more efficiently and less expensive, despite shipping them all the way from the U.S. to South Africa, and undercut the price of South African producers. Now, that's not dumping. They were making a profit. You dump when you sell things for a loss to drive a competitor out. So, yeah, that's how you do it. Interesting, the word capitalism was invented by that degenerate Marx as a slur, and the word meant the opposite of communism. No, it wasn't invented by him. No, that wasn't invented by him, Devet Martins. David Ricardo and a certain man named Smith are responsible for capitalism. On capital is what they talked about. They talked about capitalism in the 18th century. Sorry, I'm trying to find it. I thought I had the book here on the shelf. The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith talks about capitalism in the 18th century. Where's my glasses at? They're not here. That's not good. Can't see. But this book from the 18th century, The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, a Brit, an Englishman. This and David Ricardo, classic economist, talked about capitalism in the 18th century. Capitalism, the accumulation of capital. Das Kapital by Karl Marx condemned capitalism because he saw monarchies and empires and mercantilism incorrectly. Mercantilism is not capitalism. China is a mercantilist state. The Netherlands was a mercantilist state when they established a refitting station in the Western Cape, and they founded colonies around the world. These are mercantilist states. They're not capital states. Devet says, oh, it was. Oh, it was. Okay, well, we'll agree to disagree there. So you're telling me that Adam Smith didn't talk about capitalism and David Ricardo didn't talk about that a full 100 years before Karl Marx brought the topic up. Paul says, maybe I'll be able to immigrate to a capitalist country in my next life. This one's almost done. Oh, Paul. No, dude, you're going to live forever. Don't say that. There are no capitalist countries. Genuine capitalist countries. The closest is a place like Singapore. Ever compared car price sellers around the world? Yes. Believe they're ripped off here. Yes, you're correct. There's a couple reasons why. The reason why cars are so expensive in South Africa, number one, is because your market is so small. Now, it's the same thing with big screen TVs. I've talked about this. When I live in Botswana, if you go get a big screen TV from like Incredible Universe or whatever that company is, you buy that in Gaborone, it would cost you 4 times what it'll cost you in the States. Same with computers. A laptop in Botswana or South Africa costs 4 times what I would pay for a laptop in America. And that's because this marketplace is demonstrably larger. In Botswana, you might sell 10 big screen TVs a week. Whereas here at a Best Buy, a local Best Buy, they probably sell 100 in a week. Multiply that by thousands and tens of thousands of Best Buys and Circuit Cities, which are now bankrupt, but Targets and Walmarts who sell these big screen TVs, and even Amazon now, and you find millions of items sold. When you sell millions versus thousands, your margins can be much lower and still be profitable. So if I sell 1 million cars and make $100 off each one, well, I made a lot of money. But if I only sell 1,000 cars, I'm going to have a much bigger profit margin, which means I have to charge a lot more to justify my expenses to stay in business. That's a big reason why your costs are so much higher in a small market like that. In the European Union, it's integrated in many ways, but people pay much more for goods and services there because of value-added tax. I mean, in Sweden, it's 26% of the price is tax. In Germany now, it's 19 or 21%. It used to be 13%. In Botswana, it was 10. Now it's 12 or 15%. Governments steal, and they counterproductive. Oh, Paul didn't leave. Sorry to see Paul leave. Base economic theory not taught in university anymore. You're correct, Mike. Yeah, so Devet and I are disagreeing about capitalism. Maybe I misunderstood his comment, but capitalism was talked about long before Karl Marx. He used it as an excuse to justify his idiotic idea that capitalism is evil. It's not evil. It's not evil. Yeah, you're going to hit 20% before they're done. Yep. We are in crap and just need to wake up. Keep on the news, even when not good news. Yeah, no, it's that story about that 3-year-old girl and the father hung and the mother murder, suicide. That's horrible. I mean, I hate reporting stuff like that, folks, but it's true. Yeah, demand, supply is bigger in the U.S., which lowers prices. Exactly right, Erica. That's part of it. Now, the other reason, too, is that, we don't have that. In America, we don't slap 15 to 20% on top of the price and claim that that's the value of the good. That's comical. You realize that value added, in theory, means that the item is worth more. It's not. It's not worth more. A laptop that costs $1,000 and has 20% VAT on it's going to be $1,200. I can buy it for $1,000. Doesn't make it worth $1,200 because you slap VAT on it. That's comical. That only works in accounting myth. So when you sell it and you have to include the tax, you pay even more on a gain. So for instance, if you sell your laptop that you pay $1,200 for in a VAT country and you get $800, then you got a loss of $400. You can write off $400. That's just accounting scam. That's all it is. Vietnamese got food poisoning in the U.S. Well, I didn't hear about that. Alan Thadaran says, what do you think of the Iranian missiles being fired from a shipping container? I didn't see that, but that doesn't surprise me at all, Alan. It's the butter on top of the ANC. Yep, that is better than income tax. Yes, it's fairer, but it's not better. I think that's an argument we can have, Arctic. It's not better. It's fairer, that's for sure. But better? VAT hits low income disproportionately high. So if my income is 5 times someone else's and I go buy the same thing, they are paying a much heavier burden for that thing they're purchasing than I am. It's fair, but is it better? I don't know. Yeah. That's right. With that, everybody pays. That's true, Arctic. That's true. That is fair because people who don't pay income tax, which would be half of American earners, you know that, right? Half the people in America who have an income pay no federal income tax. No federal income tax. Because of exemptions and deductions, they exempt their income and deduct all the way up and then earn income credit, giving people money for having children. It's ludicrous. I have to subsidize other people's children because they go to bed and open their legs and then insert things and then produce offspring. I have to pay for that. That is not legitimate and fair. And we're not talking about a reduction in your taxable wage. We're talking about a tax credit, which means that your income can be substantially higher. It's so unfair. Low income in South Africa don't pay for crap and they take up most of the resources, healthcare and police resources. Well, that's true. That's true. Yep. And Michael is correct. A flat tax gets rid of everything. A flat tax. Yep. But will the flat tax be on consumption or on income? Now, see, this whole thing is insidious because they create fees to mislead people about income and taxes. So my cable bill is full of fees. Is it here? Let me see. I had it here earlier the other day. Let me see if my cable bill is here. It's not here. Here's another one. This is a ridiculous thing. So we pay the second highest gasoline tax for a state in this country at 58 cents per gallon. Yet I receive these little toll bills whenever I'm foolish enough to ride on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. This one here cost me $10, $9.70 for a trip that I did in January. I traveled 15 kilometers, 30 kilometers total, and I paid $10 to go 30 kilometers. $10, not 10 cents, $10 for a highway that was paid for in total over 60 years ago. They still take money. Then the employer pays corporate income tax. The employee pays personal income tax. And then the employee pays consumption taxes and fees for everything. By the time you look at what you get, you're lucky if you keep 30% of your money. And that's here in America. With fees, license, and permits, you are probably at 70%. Well, I can tell you right now, the little bit of money that I get from super chats here, thank you all for that. Appreciate that. But the super chat money, first off, YouTube takes 35% from the ad rev, or 45% from ad revenue, 30% from super chats and memberships. And fair enough, because they built the platform. That's fine. As long as they're fair about it, I'm not going to complain about that, because I would have none of that income if it wasn't for that. So that comes off the top. I never see that. So what's left is my 70% or 55%, depending which the source of revenue is. That money then gets taxed by the federal government at 28% for income tax, by the state of Pennsylvania at 3%. That's 31% right there. Then I have to pay self-employment tax because I'm self-employed. I'm my own employer. So self-employed tax, I pay another 18% for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Whereas if I work for an employer, I would only pay half that, because my employer is responsible for the other half. But since I'm self-employed, I am my own employer in theory, and therefore I get double taxed on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So I pay 18% on top of the 31% I've already paid, which means 48% of what every dollar that I make is gone before I ever see it. And since they don't take the money out of my pay, I have to save that money and pay them quarterly, or I get hit with fines and threats. What a coercive system. Also that Joe Biden can allow an invasion of this country, and we can fuel a proxy war in Ukraine. That hardly seems fair to me. Does it seem fair to you? Can we come with a perfect tax system? I fear not. Well, I think we can. The flat tax is a pretty good one. 10% across the board, everybody. How many liters in a gallon? Well, whether it's imperial gallon or the standard gallon, it's about it's around 4 or something like that. Become a state national. Huh? I don't know what that means. That's what I said, about 4. Yep. One flat tax gets away with all the BS. Yep, says Mike, and he's right. I don't know what Mike is saying, become a state national. By the way, my solar panel's been suffering the past few days because had snow yesterday, and the snow didn't melt off of the panels until early afternoon because it was below freezing. It took until then for it to heat up the panels enough that it would melt the snow, which was blocking the sun. But right now, I'm getting 5.77 kilowatt hours out of an 8 kilowatt hour capacity, which is pretty good. So at this hour, 1 o'clock, I have 12. So I have 4 more hours of sunlight, assuming that we don't get clouds in this area. And that would mean I could potentially get another 20, which would take me up in the 30s. Flat tax would put the tax guys out of business. Yeah, that's why we won't have it. Figured out Social Security. You have to pay in a scheme 40 times before you're eligible to claim. Yes and no, Arctic. That's what they tell you. But the reality is they make payments to people who never paid a penny in Social Security. 58 cents a gallon in America. Well, that's only the state tax. We also have the national tax, which is 42 cents. So we are paying $1 a gallon here in Pennsylvania for tax on gasoline. Yeah, why are we paying tax on gasoline? Why not sales tax? The state sales tax is 6%. So a gallon of gasoline right now is over $3, say $3.50 a gallon. So at $3.50 a gallon, if it were 6%, which is the sales tax in Pennsylvania, we don't have value-added tax, we have sales tax. It's 6%, that would be 21 cents. Instead of $1, we would be paying 1/5 the tax, but we have this criminal taxation scheme here in Pennsylvania. Yep. English government has stopped charging to cross the bridge into Wales. Now it's... Really? I'm trying to remember if I paid a toll when I went into Wales. Huh. Of course, I was in Wales for the 2015 Rugby World Cup. down at Cardiff. Watched New Zealand play a game down there. I think they played against, was it Fiji or something like that? I can't remember. Yeah, I caught 2 games in Wales down there, and actually went to the Five Guys in Cardiff. Man, oh man, what a big line there was at the Five Guys in Cardiff when I was there. Yep, they did a great job in Cardiff hosting. I was also in Cardiff previously for the 2012 Olympics in London because they played soccer down there. Team GB played against South Korea. I sat at the end of the pitch on the west side of the stadium at the very top, in the very top row. Man, I don't think I can make that walk this day, but in 2012 I can make that 12 years ago. Man, oh man, that was whew. And the steps are like this. It's not like this. They're like this, getting up to the top in there in Millennium Stadium. It was something else. Did I cover Trump's verdict? Yes, I did, Arctic. I did. It's ludicrous. It's the most abusive misuse of. The judge should be disbarred and charged with crimes for his actions here. He found Trump guilty before any evidence was ever submitted, and no one's talking about that, how he found him guilty in a civil trial before it was ever submitted. And this judgment is ludicrous. Trump didn't even make that kind of money off of the deal. It's ridiculous. Yep. English. Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah. Arctic, 1 liter is 0.26 gallons. So about 4 is what I said. About 4. Yep. About 4, just over 4 liters would get you a gallon. Yep. So, yeah. Anyway, we use gallons here. We don't use liters. The Canadians use liters and kilometers. I use kilometers for measuring distance, but I don't use that for fuel unless I'm overseas. Best time for the mile was 4:06. Alan. Well, 2 miles I ran in 10:36. 2 mile race. I've never run the mile. I ran a 2 mile when I was base training at 10:36. So that would be 5:18 per mile. So a lot slower than you. Alan, 5:18 is incredibly fast. 4:06 is world-class athlete there. Yeah, I've never run a 1 mile race. I ran the 2 mile in basic training and it finished in 10:36. Not bad. No, it's incredible. That's tons of stress, and it was a miserable environment. Also, that's running with hundreds of other people in the way and going around people, which cost me probably about a minute of my time. Probably could have done it in 9:36. Yep. So you would have done in 2015, huh? Alan says that was 1978. For me, that was 1983. Yeah, that was January of 1983. No, I'm sorry. It was January 1984 when I ran that. Yep. No supper for Erica. What's going on there? Did you do something bad? Yeah. What's your best time? Yeah, that's interesting, Ellen. That's impressive. You ran in 4:06. That's incredible. I'm impressed. Yeah. So 10:36 was 2 mile, but then for a long time I ran 11:34 after that. That was in basic training. But when I became an officer, my times were slower when I was enlisted because I didn't stay in as good a shape as I could have. They weren't slow, but then when I became an officer, I became really energized about it, and I got my times back down. I was running 11, and then it wound up being like 11:30, thereabouts for a long time, then 11:50. But by the time that I was in my 40s, I was running 14-something. In my 40s. I think that's pretty impressive for 2 miles, so about 7-minute miles. I should be in the stadium against France. I'll send pics, says Fleshin. Okay. Oh, you were in the stadium at 2015. Okay. Yeah. No, 2015 was cool, but the London Olympics in 2012 were awesome. Boris Johnson was the mayor, and people, because it's August, people typically leave London and go to the beach or go elsewhere in August like the Europeans do. The French just all decamp and head to Normandy or to the south of France, the Côte d'Azur, to get away from the cities because it's so miserably hot in August. And so the Brits do something similar. London normally empties out a bit in August as a normal course of practice, but it still fills up with tourists from abroad. But because of the Olympics and people being warned that there would be no lodging and it was hot and it was going to be chaos, people didn't come to the Olympics. If you remember the 2012 Olympics, the key thing that we saw from that was Michael Phelps was swimming in the pool. They had given away all the tickets, not all, but most of the tickets to the National Olympic Committees, places like Mongolia and Sierra Leone and South Africa got all these tickets, and they handed those tickets out, but they didn't give them to people. People weren't coming to London. So Boris Johnson, during the first week, said, please come to London. Please come to London. Well, our events are not being attended. It was embarrassing to watch Michael Phelps set world records in an Olympic swimming pool in London with like 30 people sitting in the stands. It was horrible. It was a bad image. And so they rescinded those tickets, pulled them back from a lot of those National Olympic committees in 2012 during the first week, and then put them into the pool. But what they did is they only made them available to people who were based in Europe because they figured, oh, it's too late for people to come from Canada and the U.S., Brazil, from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Japan. They're not going to come. It's too late to make plans for this. So what they did is they said anyone who lived in Europe, and I was stationed in Germany. So with my IP address in Germany, I went into the pool and I applied, and I wound up getting tickets. I went to 14 events, I think, in London, including those on the street, like the triathlon. Was it triathlon? I forget what it was. Anyway, the two British brothers competed in that, finished first and third. But I was at the Serpentine in Hyde Park for the running, and the bicycling there. So I covered the 50-kilometer walk/run. It's a walk, Anyway, so the marathon, the marathon. So I covered those, plus a bunch of events, swimming events, diving events, and I got that game down in Cardiff because it was soccer games that. Tickets you couldn't get before. So I was able to get tickets and go to, about 14 events, and it was pretty incredible. Finally got to go to an Olympics. I tried to go to the Lillehammer Olympics in 92. Wasn't unable to do it. Wanted to go to Albertville in 94. Couldn't do that because I was getting ready to leave Germany. And so I finally went to Olympics in London in 2012, and it was the best Olympics. It was incredible. But then London has become a cesspool since then. And the 2015 World Cup was good in the UK, or in England, I should say. The portion in London was mostly in the East End and Wembley. The Wembley game was great. I went to Ireland versus Romania. It was the largest attended World Rugby game in history, 82,000 plus people there. It was incredible. And I stayed at the Hilton right next to the stadium because I had a Hilton membership and got a room well in advance. So, yeah. Alan was at Lillehammer. I wanted to go to Lillehammer so bad. The U.S. beat Sweden in that, if I remember correctly, in hockey. I wanted to go. We go to the Med in the summer. There you go. See Fleshin. There you go. Ray Max says, hello. Viva Zola Bud. Wow, that's a flash from the past, Zola Bud. Boris is first but not last screw up, says Arctic. No, this year for the Six Nations. Huh? Oh, I should be in the stadium against France. Oh, okay. Cool. I think you said that, Fleshin. So that's Wales. You mentioned that previously. Wales versus France. Yeah, cool beans. You can even call in if you want, if I cover that game. Yes, that's right, Ray Max. Zola Bud was barefoot. Cowfoot. Was it Ramstein at the time, says Ellen. Okay. The Brownless, what's this? Brownless, the best athletes in the world. Huh? Arctic, you asking about the interview for Putin with Tucker Carlson? Yes, I watched the first 30 minutes of it, and I was bored by the history lesson. Most of which I'd heard before, a fair amount of which is true, some of it's myth. So, yeah, I got bored with it after that. And, of course, after the interview, Putin is running around saying that, well, I was surprised that Tucker didn't ask me any hard questions. It's pretty funny. Didn't ask any hard questions. Wow, we've zoomed up to 117 likes here. I quit asking for likes and we zoomed. Got 5 new members, got a little bit of super chat revenue, and we're up to 600 views. Average view time has climbed from 10 minutes to 15 minutes as you stuck with the program. Thank you all for that. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. I've been at this for 2 hours. Wow, it went by fast today, folks. It went by very fast. I didn't realize we've been around this long. Wow. So I'm up to 13.3 kilowatt hours now on my grid. I wish I had a whole roof full of panels. Man, that would make a ton of difference here. Feed it back into the grid and make the electric producer choke on all my electricity. As I said, I run about 17 kilowatt hours per day. So I've had, let me see. I've now had, so... the 13th, the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th. I've produced, well, today, not yet, but since the 13th, I've produced as much electricity during the day as I consume throughout the 24-hour period and a surplus. So that's cool. Need a motor, stay well. All right, Alan, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. History lesson was a bit much, but the rest was good. He threw Tucker off with the history lesson. Yeah, he sure did. It was a bit much. Yep, anyway. So, yeah, I did see that. So, okay. 120 likes now. Cool. All right. It is Sunday, and lots going on. I'm going to sit down. In the Free State, we had to run barefoot on gravel. Oof. That sucks. Oof. Quentin Noggles here. Wow, Quentin. It's been a while, man. How you doing? Long time no see. What's going on? Quentin? How you doing? Often ran barefoot and still broke school records. Wow, that's pretty impressive. I don't run barefoot. My feet are too tender. Nope. I do walk out and collect my mail out on the sidewalk and the blacktop and then down into the street and collect my mail barefoot, but I don't walk around barefoot. In my yard, I've got this invasive weed that's very sharp, and it looks like a little miniature pine trees, but only like a couple centimeters off the ground, and it's wickedly sharp. Yeah, they have deep roots, and I take a gardening tool and go down and try to break the roots several inches below the soil, and they still come back. I don't know how it got in there. I think it might have been in some seed. It was mixed in with some seed that we planted a few years ago here to get the lawn going. Played rugby barefoot in thorns. Ouch. Ouch. Hester's out of here. Okay, people are leaving. People are leaving. All right, well, you can always go back and watch the broadcast from the beginning if you missed something here, folks. Sunday, once again, 1 o'clock on the East Coast. And is there... Quentin says, well, I'm glad you caught it too, Quentin. Thanks for catching it. Watch more of them. Go watch some of my videos, like the one I did on Julius Malema, the Steve Hofmeyer video, and also the one about the ANC in Gaza. That one is the ICJ rejects South Africa's plea to engage. Yeah, that one's dying off now, but I got 101 subscribers from that. Cool. 14,000 views, so 14,600. So that's nice. Yeah, so we're just under 14,500 subscribers at the moment. Yeah, but the one I did last night on EFF doesn't seem to get much attention, so it's got about 1,000 views. All right, so 61. We saw quite a few people left there. All right, nice sunny day in southeastern Pennsylvania. Well, it's a nice sunny day in central Pennsylvania, and I'm getting almost 6 kilowatt hours per hour now, and I'm almost 14 for the day. All right, Vasby in Kimberley was what? I don't know what that is. There's a Vasby in Gotland, if I'm not mistaken. It's the capital of it. All right, that's it. I'm going to close it up here, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to watch the program and let other people know about it. Do appreciate your support, and I'll catch y'all later. Have a lovely evening. I'm going to take a break right now. I've been busy working on this all day. So your channel is growing. Heard someone at work speak about you. Are you serious, Quentin? Cool. I'm glad to hear that but it was much bigger. It was much bigger before. So someone at work talked about me. Well, I hope they had nice things to say, and I hope they tell others about the channel. That's the thing. Word of mouth can grow when YouTube censors your channel. So yeah, please let's get word of mouth out there and let people know about it. It always helps. And I will have potentially some good or some interesting news. I'll let you know on Thursday. Hey, Raymax. I'll let you know on Thursday if I can break the news to you about something happening. And you may find it very interesting. So stay tuned. Potentially news coming out Thursday. Well, there'll be news Thursday one way or the other. All right? I'll give you news one way or the other Thursday, what's happening. Take care, everybody, and be safe out there. Thanks a lot. Cheers.